Good morning, everybody. Hell of an episode for you today. But before that, let's discuss what makes this podcast possible. That's right. It is Black Rifle Coffee. And right around the corner, within, 2 days of this episode coming out, is the 4th of July. Black Rifle Coffee is doing something special. Our nation's Independence Day is right around the corner, and the best way to celebrate America's 248th birthday is with America's Coffee. Black Rifle Coffee Company is having an epic sale to help you get ready for the 4th. The way this Independence Day sale works is the more you spend, the more you're going to save. If you spend $50 and get 20% off, spend $75, get 25% off, or go big with $100 and save yourself 30% on the entire purchase. This way you can earn yourself some serious savings while you stock up on gear, coffee, and apparel. Black Rifle is also bringing back the Freedom Roast for a limited time, so go ahead and grab a bag before they run out because those will always go fast. And if you haven't tried the Freedom Roast yet, it's the closest thing you can get to the literal taste of freedom. Black Rifle Coffee Company is veteran-founded and veteran-run, proudly serving coffee and culture to people who love America. Every purchase you make with Black Rifle Coffee helps them further their mission to support veteran and first responder causes. They also have some of the best gear and apparel you can find, so you can shop from a wide selection of mugs, tees, workout gear, outdoor apparel, and way more. All of them are made with vet-inspired designs, and you're not going to find them anywhere else. If you're looking for some high-quality patriotic gear for your 4th of July cookout, this is your one-stop shop. Remember, spend $50, save 20%. Spend $75, save 25%, or $100 or more, and you save 30% on your purchase. Head over to blackriflecoffee.com and get yourself some savings on the best patriotic gear for your 4th of July celebrations. And that's it on the business side of the house. Let's talk about my guest today. His name is Trevor Milton. He has done quite a few things in his life, but I would say most likely recognizable for his role as the founder and CEO of the Nikola Corporation. I don't know the best way to describe that corporation, perhaps most well known for trying to spearhead a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle in the trucking space, trying to reduce emissions in one of the industries that is the number 2 polluter of our planet. Perhaps the Badger pickup truck, which is an idea that they were working towards. The story of Nikola, the story of why Trevor left, the things that have happened in the aftermath, his journey through the legal system, which is not over. I don't even know where to classify if it's in the beginning, middle, or end. He's in it for sure, is fascinating. He does an excellent job of describing it in his own words. And I think the best thing we can do is just allow him to do that. So let's dive right in. Episode number 342 with Trevor Milton. Enjoy.
Okay, I got the red smoke.
Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. Get cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Where do we start? Just page 1? What do you think?
Which one? Page 1 of which one?
As I said before we sat down, I really appreciate the light reading that you sent over. It was, and like I just said, I don't know much about law, and some of it's dense, right? And not in a bad way. It's just complex, and you can tell there's a lot of layers. It makes me never want to be involved with a publicly traded company.
After what I've been through, I don't think I'd ever want to be involved with one again either.
Did you think it was even possible they could have gone this route?
No, never. Never even crossed my mind. Problem was I was really naive in the world of like trusting other people, because all the people around me were like, oh, you have to trust this person, you have to trust this person, you have to trust this person. And it was actually my downfall is that I trusted too many people. I would ask them for help. I'd ask them for things and they wouldn't provide it. And then and then essentially when the pressure hit the fan, It was just like point fingers. And it was these people that you trusted, And so the trust was the big one. Was I just had so many people around me that I trusted, and I should have just been way more bold and just saying, screw it. I'm going to do it my way. And this is the way we're going to do it. And, and I don't care what you advisors say, but it's almost like the advisors are the ones that just, or the people around you, the other executives are the ones that just, their advice is terrible a lot of times.
Was it because of in reading this, it breaks down your background a little bit, and I definitely want you to talk about, kind of who you are and where you come from, but it mentions multiple times, other than a semester in college, no higher education. Do you think that played, or that sense of yourself played against you when it came to these advisors? Because I would imagine people are telling you at some point, hey, time to bring the adults into the room, right? We have to bring the degrees and we have to bring the certificates and all of those things.
Yeah, I think that, in the world of finance, money, banks, other things, they really look down on and frown upon people that haven't done what they've done. I came from a pretty, humble background. I mean, our family was broke growing up. We had nothing, lost my mom to cancer, lost our house, lost everything we owned. I was 14 years old. My dad was working hours away into a different city, and, really I was just there to fend for myself. And, I came from a really small farm town. And, and the hard part is you can't really relate with these people, because a lot of them go to Harvard or Yale, and they're just like, if you have accomplished so much, because a lot of the entrepreneurs in this world come from humble beginnings. It's because they have grit. They know how to fight, and they've been beat down, and they just don't know how to give up. And you don't get that with like a lot of the highly educated people. The highly educated people are like, this is my thing. I'm going to do A, B, C, and D, and this is my life. And the scrappy people, the people who've come from nothing, I used to live in Brazil when I was younger, favelas. They just scrap, man, and they never give up, and they don't really they don't care what's in front of them. Like, looking in the military, I mean, you go into a situation, you have no idea what's in front of you.
We try to tell ourselves we do.
Yeah.
There's oftentimes people say that the only thing accurate about military intelligence is the laugh afterwards. And I've found that to be true sometimes. Not because they're malicious, but they just don't know as much as they say they do.
Yeah, and stuff always gets harder in the moment than you ever imagine.
Yes.
It's like when the pressure, when everything's hitting you and the storm is hitting you, there's variables. We both love to fly, and it's always, when you're practicing like emergencies or whatever, it's like when the variables are outside of you hitting you, the stuff that is normally so easy to do becomes incredibly hard to do, even just the basic functions of certain things. And so I think that was it. That's part of it, is just the amount of pressure that comes from a publicly traded company, and these people that are surrounded you have got these really high degrees. They're all from Harvard, Yale, whatever, and they look at you, and even though they work for you, behind your back, a lot of them want your demise. They want to take you out because you're not worthy of being in a position that you're in. Like, you haven't earned it.
Yeah.
And that's part of what happened to me is, you grow to a point where you have something that everybody wants. And the greed and the lust in this world, I never thought it would. I just didn't think it could happen to me. Like, I was like, oh no, I got good people around me, whatever. I've always treated everyone really well. I gave most of my company away to my employees. I was like, no one would ever like turn around and lie about me. And boy, was I wrong. Like, I mean, that was a lesson I learned, and it was a tough lesson.
I'll leave the name of the person of the company out of it, but we were just talking about somebody we know we're not sure. Maybe they like helicopters. Maybe they don't like helicopters. Maybe they're asking buying questions. Maybe they're not. It's hard to say, but they brought in a lot of people as a company went public, and it almost was the downfall of the company. Not only was it the personalities, but they also brought the culture from the other brands that they came from, and it almost derailed the direction that the company was going. It got close. I'm speaking for him a little bit in that, but it seemed like it got pretty close to being untenable.
Yeah, look, when you go from like a private company to a public company, you have enormous amount of different people coming into the equation. With all these people coming in, you have different personalities, and you have some people that their sole desire is to own and take everything everyone else has.
Do you think they say that in their interview process?
No, but one of them actually told me, you wouldn't believe this. One of them actually told me, he said, Trevor, you got to keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Did this person end up being one of your enemies?
Yes, he was one of the people that actually has spent the years and years and years trying to destroy my life purposely, and to take everything I own. And it was really interesting because I never thought about that. I never even imagined this person would have a desire to take me out or snipe me. And that's what he was, just laying in wait just for the moment to take everything. And he did. I mean, it's just how they, how some people operate is they don't know how to build. They only know how to take and destroy. And there's just different personalities in the world. And you just never know what you're going to get when you go to a public company because you're forced to bring these people in. And you look at like what Elon went through. I mean, Elon went through some serious things as well, going public that was just hellacious, and people turning on him and people trying to destroy him. And I'm not, whatever people think. I mean, I don't know the inner workings of anything over there, so I can't really opine. But I only know what I've read. And you look at other groups like that have gone public, and some of them have been targeted just like I have, and some of them survived, some of them didn't. And it's just the nature of the beast. When there's a lot of money on the line, it brings out the very best and the very worst of most people.
For that person who, and not specifically the person you're talking about, but just that type of person in general who is literally trying to, what do they call it, smiley glad hand you, where they're telling you what you want up front, but their end goal is to try to take it all. Do you think that they feel like they can do it better? Or do they just want it all? And I'm curious how it would actually go if they got what they wanted. Because it's easy to say, oh, I can do it better, or I have a better idea, until you're actually in the seat and the world is looking at you. I find it's very different than what you think it's going to be going into it. So I'm just curious how you think that would play out for those people that have those desires.
He's usually never as good as the person who found the company. I have a lot of love and respect for founders of companies because they go through the worst of it. They have to battle and fight through the very worst of starting a company. The hardest part is their first 4 years, because that's where you're growing. You have all the growing pains, you have everything else. And then after that, the next 4 years become very difficult, but the scale, you're able to start to scale. And so a lot of these people come in at the 4 to 8 year mark because they usually throw the founders out or whatever, push them out or whatever. And then you'll normally see these companies tank. I'm a good example would be is WeWork, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was a very interesting one. Now I actually have no experience with Adam Neumann at all. I don't even know him, never talked to him, but I did notice if you look at when he was at the company, there was a certain amount of growth and excitement and everything else and a vision, good or bad. I don't know. But he had plenty of people that were excited to work with him. And as soon as the SoftBank, took over and he was out, it came down a lot. And it's nothing against SoftBank, but the problem is you have to replace Adam with another Adam. And normally they don't replace him with another Adam. They're going to replace him with some Yale educated or Harvard educated person. And they run it's just a totally different style of running. Same thing with the company, Nikola, that I founded, that I built. If you look at it, when I left, it was $34. I think it was around $34 a share when I left the company, and it was just until just a few days ago when they reverse split it. It got down to 30-something cents, and so you complete destruction of the stock value because someone always thinks they can do better and they actually can't, and they don't know what they're doing. There was a famous quote that says, I wish I could remember what it was. Maybe your guys can find it, but it said something like a evil person would rather rule over the ashes of a country.
Michael, this is where your internet skills are being called into effect here. I swear to God, half the time he's over there just spacing out. I've caught him watching YouTube videos.
Relevant to the topic at hand, of course.
Occasionally relevant to the topic at hand. Sometimes you're watching Pokemon.
You got to find that quote, though. It's actually really good.
He'll find it.
It's so good.
An evil enemy will burn his own nation to the ground to rule over the ashes. God.
That's one of the most powerful quotes I've ever seen because I've seen it
so true in
over
human
and
nature
over
too.
and over. They would burn it down and destroy it as long as they get a rule over those ashes, and there's someone that has to need them.
Yeah, they'd rather be in charge of just a pile of shit than not be in charge at all.
And here's the thing, when I left the company, I've actually never talked about this until it was in my sentencing with the judge. So this is a conversation I've never had ever. And I haven't ever even spoken publicly about the company in a podcast or interview or anything since I left the company. So this is the very first one I've ever done in almost 4 years, And so this is interesting. When I left the company, prior to me leaving the company, a doctor had put the wrong person's blood plasma into my wife, and it almost killed her. And it was like I was going through absolute hell with her health, trying to figure out how to help her through this. So watching her go from a healthy, young, great woman to all of a sudden developing diabetes instantly, Hashimoto's, POTS. You go down the list of multiple different autoimmune diseases, and it all came from this doctor who this malpractice that where he screwed up and the nurse's assistant or whatever she was called grabbed the wrong person's blood out of the warming drawer and put it in my wife, the blood plasma, and it almost killed her.
Yeah.
And so I was going through this hell at the same time we were going public, and I was watching my wife not function at home and need me, and I couldn't provide the help for her and the company. And so I decided, I was like, when we'll get into this Hindenburg thing, this big article came out, this big short seller report to make a lot of money betting on the company failing. They put out this huge slanderous report. Actually had very little to none to do with me stepping aside. It was when I stepped aside, I was like, I can't fight all these battles at once. And the most important one to me in my life would be my family.
Yeah.
And I just never realized that, like, you know, if you give up power, and I did it with grace. I mean, I didn't get, you know, some insane contract like where I could screw the company 100 ways sideways. I was like, okay, look, what do you guys want? And they got it right, you know, as what do you guys want? And, you know, it was done very quickly, no lawsuits were filed. I mean, it was just a very amicably thing. And it's because I trusted these people around me. And they promised me a lot of things that never came to fruition. I didn't realize it, but they all wanted my power. They all were vying for the position because I was the executive chairman. I had control over a lot of the voting block of the company, not all of it, but I think I owned a little over 20-something% of the company, which was a huge amount for a publicly traded company. And so, you know, I handed it over to these people, and because I was like, I got to go take care of my wife. That's more important. I mean, the rest of this doesn't matter. And it's amazing to see that, like, that when you give power to people that have either never had it or desire it, it's amazing to see how quick it destroys them. The decisions they make is crazy.
In the documents you sent, it makes no mention of that. It makes it seem as if you left the Hindenburg report shortly after you left because of that. And I mean, honestly, like, what is in here? There's 3 different things. I'll let you break them down. And, you know, you haven't had the chance to talk about it, or you've chosen not to talk about it publicly. I would love for you to walk me through what is in here, but maybe even before, like, building the company and what led to this and where we are now through your own choice of words in your own time, just to be able to unpack it, because there is so much here. And it's like the internet. People will go and they click on the first link that they find on a Google search, and they think they have a complete understanding. I think I had heard of Nikola before you reached out. I don't think I would have guessed that it was trucking, though, or anything to do with hydrogen. I think I had just heard it. So my snapshot into this is limited, and I don't have a complete picture of what happened based off of what you sent, nor do I think probably anybody does. So I want you to be able to just describe where it came from, what happened in your own terms, however you want to.
Yeah. So crazy.
Then we'll read these page by page.
Give you a little, just a couple snippets there, and then we'll get into all that. My name's Trevor Milton. I was the founder of Nikola Motor Company. And I got indicted on 4 counts of security fraud and wire fraud, convicted on 3 of them in New York City. So they took me to New York and indicted me in New York. And I'm going to stop you there, because that was one of the things that, like, hey, I don't ever want to be a part of a publicly traded company. The fact that they were able to get you to New York because a wire passed through Manhattan, and I don't know in this day and age if they're like mailing money. I feel like that means code passed through a computer somewhere, and then therefore they became the jurisdiction for your case, is terrifying to me. Well, it's really scary because the way the Constitution's written is it says that you're supposed to be tried by people of your peers in your own city. And even the founders even talked about, like, it was within your own neighbors, not even like within different counties. They wanted it within your own neighbors, people that know you, and that people can testify to whether or not your character is good or not. And what happened to me is that all the alleged comments and the alleged conduct all happened in either New York. I'm sorry. All happened in either Arizona or Utah. And so what they did is 99.99999% or whatever of everything was in Utah and Arizona that they alleged was wrong. And they drugged me to New York, in the Southern District of New York, which I had never even been to in my life. I had no business there, no bank accounts, no homes. I had only been to New York, I think twice in my whole life up to that point, and they were for passing through flights. Mm-hmm. And I did one interview with CNBC there, once. So that was a carve out, but it was what's interesting is they took me and they actually dragged me all the way to the Southern District of New York to indict me, rather than in Arizona or Utah. And it was really hard going in there because here I am. I come from, I was, lived on a small farm when I was a kid. I mean, it wasn't anything great. It was just some horses and stuff. Grew up in a farm town, very uneducated, when it comes to like, if you compare it to like what college degrees do you have? And, I didn't resonate at all with anybody in there at all. Like there was no ability. It was full of, they were not my peers, when it came to us trying to explain this to the judge. We filed motions for it and the judge denied it and said, no, you're going to get tried here. And then what's interesting is that they originally they had said that the stock would traded through New York Stock Exchange. Problem is the servers are actually in New Jersey. They're not in New York. So it's like, where's the jurisdiction? Where's the jurisdiction on this? But they got it, and that's what they get. The government can choose to where to try you no matter what. And they ultimately, no matter what, you will not win a venue. The venue part of the Constitution is gone. It's
that should be terrifying to people. I mean, literally the discussion where they clearly say that you are still responsible for the passing through New York, even though that you're not expected to understand the inner workings or behind the scenes of a bank. And that was their justification. Should scare the living shit out of every citizen in this country.
Yeah, it's called foreseeability. So the Constitution says, and even the Southern District has very decent case law, and it says essentially you have to know what the conduct you're doing is going to go through New York. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually in our appeal where we are going to the appellate court saying, look, part of this, there's no foreseeability at all whatsoever of New York. Like Trevor, I mean, the wire I sent was sent from Utah to a title company in Utah. So a bank in Utah to a title company in Utah, and had no idea somehow that it supposedly, which we still don't even think it did, supposedly routed through some Fed system throughout the country and through Southern back down, which means essentially that venue would go away in America. The Constitution's aspect of venue would be gone because that means Southern District would control every venue in America at all times. And that's not what it was built for. And so we have that as part of our appeal is like, look, this is just the wrong venue. And hopefully the appellate court agrees with it, because if not, then the venue clause in America is just gone. You might as well just close every division of every prosecution office in America and just say, okay, only Southern District exists.
Yeah. And I didn't mean to cut off your train of thought. You were talking about the 4 counts, the securities and wire. And then I derailed us by talking about the insanity of a electronic proton passing through New York.
Yeah. So I just wanted people to know, like, look, I've been through a lot. It's a mind-boggling story. And every day I wake up, I'm still like, this can't be real. I feel like I'm in some weird dream or a nightmare. And it's like, this has got to end. And it's going on, now for 4+ years. And my appeal will get heard by the end of this year. So look, I'm actually really excited to get into this because no one really knows the story about what it's like to build a company, how we got there, and then also to be tried and what the trial is like. And so it's going to be really cool to tell your listeners about this. Cause I mean, I never, I always heard about politicians. You see Trump getting tried all the time on things, or other politicians getting indicted for things, or even business owners. And you're just like, oh, that person, sometimes in the past, I used to hear people get indicted. I'm like, oh, they got to be guilty. The FBI would never indict someone that's innocent. And I'm like, after I went through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, probably there's a high likelihood that there was one study, I wish I could remember what it was. Like we put it in one of our legal documents, but I think it was between 20 and 30% of people incarcerated are actually innocent. They've been framed by the prosecutors or the judge, or whoever. And I couldn't believe that is actually true. And it's getting worse now. It's up to, I think personally, I think that you're even higher now. And it started out with a lot of black people where you'd get these white juries that would convict a lot of these black people. And it didn't matter if they were innocent. They'd just throw them in prison. Yeah. And now I realize that it's the same thing in our day and age. It's just changed. Now it's like you get, you might get people that essentially hate either a certain class of people or wealth of people or whatever. And you'll see this, we'll talk about this today, where we actually had a juror who her New Year's resolution right before my trial, she posted her New Year's resolution was to abolish the billionaire class. And then she lied about it to the judge. She said she did not use social media, so we were not able to investigate her. And then she got on my jury, and then she lied multiple other times. And it's really crazy because now you can have someone who can get on the jury who has a desire to affect an outcome. and there's no repercussion for it anymore. Like that's normally lying to a judge essentially would be, they'd be prosecuted, right? Mm-hmm. No, they get rewarded. They go out and they get a deal with with some Wall Street Journal or whatever it is to do an interview, or they do get a book to publish because they were on the jury. So the problem is it's become commercialized. These people become commercialized. They're allowed to make money off of convicting someone. And it's just crazy. It's like, there's so much I learned. I'm like, gosh, I just want to tell the world this. I want to tell everybody this because nobody knows. I didn't know. And a lot of comments online are people are like, oh, the government would never, he's guilty. He was found guilty. Dude, you can find a ham sandwich guilty. You can indict a ham sandwich and you can find a ham sandwich guilty. Like, it is so easy people have no idea. So I'm actually really excited to be here today.
Fire away. Start it off wherever you want to.
Cool. So I'll start when I was young because that was really where it came from. My dad worked on the Union Pacific Railroad, and he was a manager at the Union Pacific Yard in Las Vegas. And I grew up around locomotives, and I was always like, "Oh, these things are how kids are, right? Anything big, tractor, train, machine is like, as a kid, that's like your favorite thing." And I was like, "This is God. I want it. I love locomotives." And so I was around the operator one day, and this operator had told me, he says, "One day they'll be smart enough to make a locomotive semi-truck." And I was like, bam, that was it. I mean, I remember that as plain as day, and I've told this story a few times throughout my career. And it was like the moment in my life when I was like, there is going to be, because he was telling me about the electric motors and how efficient these electric motors are and how much torque they have. And it makes a lot of sense on heavy duty trucking because that's where it fit, when you're pulling a lot of weight, the electric motors have so much torque.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to 2014, I had started a few companies. I'd failed a few times. I had also succeeded in a few companies, and I had made some money. And this company called Worthington had bought our company out, and I had made a little bit of money, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna invest into this. I want to build this truck finally. I want to do it. And this is 2014. So to think about this is like back in the day when there wasn't a single electric semi truck or anything on the market. Nothing. It was Tesla had been out for a few years. It was still not even considered a mainstream item at all. Electric vehicles at that time were very frowned upon. Most people thought that they were just complete, BS, that they would never work. And so I was like, I'm going to do this. And I think the future is going to hold this, and I'm going to be rewarded for building a product that the world needs. And so we decided to go into this truck, and we built, and so 2014, we started hiring people. We worked out of my basement in a place in Salt Lake City. And so I had maybe 10, 15 people there in my basement, something like that. And then we moved to a shop. Finally, we got out of my basement, moved to the shop. Funny story is we had the cops called on us when we had our employees in the basement because they thought we were running like a prostitution ring. Because they had all these,
just a bunch of dudes in a basement. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, a bunch of dudes in a basement with like, we had like 2 or 3 girls that worked for us.
Yeah, and that actually makes it look worse, I think.
It did. So it was like, they came over and we took the cop. We actually brought the cops downstairs. We're like, yeah, well, look, we'll show you because we don't even want you to even come to any crazy conclusions.
Let's squash this right here. Yeah.
Yeah. So they came downstairs and we walked into it was great. And they were like, oh, this is so cool. And so we started in the basement. We moved up from the basement into a building in Salt Lake City. And that's where we built the first prototype. The first prototype was called the Nikola 1. And that's a big part of this whole story, the Nikola 1. It was this, at first it was a natural gas turbine truck. And it was running an electric platform, but it was a natural gas turbine truck. And we had this big unveiling in December 2016. So you're talking 2 years later, we had this big unveiling. And this unveiling, we had this natural gas truck there. And we put essentially we were going to tell the world that we were going from, well, I think we had actually already told them before that, but we told them we were going to move from natural gas over to hydrogen. So we had hydrogen logos on there and stuff like that. And and nothing was hidden. We were very open to the audience. The second day of the entire event, we talked about how it was a natural gas truck, and we're going to have to rebuild this multiple times. It's going to be a hydrogen truck. It's not now, but this was the future. We were showing the future, right? Showing off what we were going to build. And I didn't know later on that was actually part of part of the indictment. And I'm just like, what is wrong with that? Like, you know, we told the audience the second day that this truck was a natural gas truck. You know, it's not a hydrogen truck. And they said, oh, well, you have these hydrogen logos on here. You're a fraud. And it's just crazy. I mean, it's like you can't show what you like. At that point, you might as well get rid of all digital presentations of what you want to do for marketing, because then I guess it's fraud.
Is there argument that you needed to caveat with like every slide or every sentence that, hey, we're talking about what is going to happen in the future versus what you're looking at directly in front of you?
So as I said, I never got a college degree. Right? I went to one semester of college, and I speak.
Which is one more semester of college than me. So
Did you?
are. Oh, no, I went to 0. I barely graduated high school.
I didn't. I had to get my GED. I didn't even graduate. I went and got back and got my GED. So that
was the low barrier, and I tripped and almost fell under it. So you have more higher education than me. You're doing better than me.
Hey, you win some, you lose some.
Well, and I asked that question because it comes up in the doc. They do reference that vehicle often, and that particular event often.
And not only that, my speech. Actually, probably the most. We're going to pause right there for a second and then jump forward to the trial in 2020.
Okay.
And I'm only going to spend a few seconds on it. Most of that entire trial was the fact that I used the wrong tense of verb. That's what I got indicted for. Was they said, oh, you used the wrong tense of verb. So it was like all around, like my speech was not perfect. But we'll go back. We'll get up to that later. So now we're going to go back to 2016 at this unveiling of the truck. And I would talk about the future. We would talk about what we're going to do. I even said on stage, I said, this truck will have to be rebuilt multiple times before production from the ground up. So I mean, I don't know what a better disclaimer you can give to the whole audience. It was to everybody, and it was live stream. So it's like, there's not anyone that was withheld from that information. Everybody. We had a power outlet on the bottom of the truck, which if you go to an automotive show, go to CES in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Almost every single vehicle there has a power outlet up under the truck, because you have to run them for hours and hours and hours.
Just like an airplane or heli expo as well.
Yep.
They want to show the avionics. They got to plug them into ground.
And they actually said that was fraudulent. So they part of that, like if you look at what Hindenburg, when they came out, that was like one of their center things about how this power plug was plugged into this truck, and the whole truck was fake. And the government, same thing in my trial, like this whole truck was fake. It had a power plug in it, And I'm like, this is what every automotive group does. This is like me telling a prosecutor, you're guilty for using your computer. It's like, dude, everybody uses their computer. Like, I mean, that's how you power a vehicle when it's on the stage. Like, you can't just run it. First of all, it's illegal to run them indoors. So you got the emissions and everything else. So in a zero emission vehicle, you don't. But the problem with that is then you got your big battery you got to charge, and you got the likelihood of someone doing something to it. So why they're in there? You don't want those functions operating. So I got up and I told everybody about the truck. And just to be clear, what's interesting is the Hindenburg report had essentially, and even in trial, spread some serious, powerful lies about this. And they said that the truck was all fake. It wasn't. It was almost every part on that truck was actually designed to function and work. So the batteries were 800 volt batteries. And some of your audience will just kind of not maybe understand, but some of them will, because they've driven some vehicles. But the batteries worked. The e-axles were designed by a world-class firm that also designed I believe they designed the Neo, which is one of the biggest electric vehicles car companies in the world now. They designed their e-axle. So this was like we outsourced it. We paid for it. It came, all the parts were there. We never you go down the line. The air system worked. We had a compressor that was that could function. We had our brakes that could function. We had our natural gas fuel system that could function. We even had a turbine that could function. So theoretically, that truck could drive if we wanted it to. But we didn't. There were safety reasons why we never drove it. And so, just a few months after this big unveiling, this company called Philips reached out to us, and they were like, "Hey, we want to use your truck in a commercial." And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, that's awesome. Sounds good." And so our team got together with them and built this commercial. And the commercial was this truck. They wanted to show that the new, which is today, like new technology semi trucks, compared to the old trucks. Because this company Philips I think had been around for like 100 years. So they wanted to show like where the past met the future, right? Mm-hmm. So we had our truck. Our truck was driving down this hill or rolling down this hill, and then it would meet the old truck. And it was like the future meeting the past. And then there was this guy in coveralls from the past talking to the new driver. And the only thing they had in common was that they were still using Philips parts. So that was like the whole idea of this commercial, right? I'm like, cool, man. Sounds good. And we told them, we said, look, we can't operate this thing under its own power for safety and for multiple reasons because there's all kinds of like DOT permits you have to do, and you have to be on racetracks and lots of stuff. And so Philip's like, no worries, and we got this commercial all cut and done, and they shared it within their company, and then our company had posted part of the commercial, and this is kind of important because there was a tweet that went out and said, the Nikola one in motion.
Again, that is referenced, I think, in all three of these documents as well. It's one of the main points they come back to.
It's actually the biggest one. It's probably the biggest one because what happened is when Hindenburg came out, this big short seller report. Now we're in 2000 right now. We're in 2017 for the commercial. Okay, when we did that commercial. Fast forward 3 years, the Hindenburg report comes out. The whole point of that is that this truck was rolled down a hill, and that's how they sold it to the media, and boy, did it take off like wildfire. It was like this, you just never know what's going to go viral. And somehow that thing just went viral. Like everyone's like, oh, they rolled the truck down the hill, they're fraud. And it was like, this is a commercial. Like a yellow Camaro turned into Bumblebee. Do we indict General Motors? Because Bumblebee turned into a Camaro?
Yeah.
I mean, everyone knows that and when you're doing commercials, that's like, it's just marketing material,
Did you guys in that commercial, and I'm asking this because I wonder where the legal threshold is, like if you had put an asterisk underneath and said, whatever, simulate whatever language it would be, right? Like clarifying that it was maybe not using the term rolling, but like simulated motion for whatever it is, future production, like would that have erased the complications that would have come from that?
That's the problem is that I don't think it would because the government just picks and chooses who they want to indict. And it doesn't matter about the facts. Like there's a set of facts that normally business owners run on, and it's supposed to keep you safe because we had disclosed that truck was not under its own power. I disclosed that multiple times and they still indicted me on it. So it's like, it's hard. Like for instance, General Motors unveiled a Hummer in the electric vehicle Hummer in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And that electric vehicle Hummer was actually not an electric vehicle Hummer. It was a gas powered Hummer, but selling the electric Hummer.
What it was going to be.
Yeah. And guess what? Their CEO didn't get indicted. So it's like crazy. It's like the stuff that was out there and 100 things. Like there was a pre-driven route with Elon on an autonomous car that he used. And his engineers later came out and said, oh yeah, the whole route was pre-driven and pre-planned. And he sold it as this car's driving autonomously. He was never indicted. Now it's like, I don't think that any, I don't know the details of those cases, so I can't tell whether or not there was like something wrong. But I do know that like, listen, I'm sure that he made plenty of disclaimers about things just like we did. And you would assume that like, that's enough, but it's not, because what it comes down to is if they want to indict you, they will. There's nothing doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. They just, in this country now, it's no longer about like whether you did something wrong. It was just like, do we want to take this guy down? Yeah, we do. Okay, let's just go take him down and ruin his life. Yeah,
it seems like the government, their assertion, or the people, United States of America versus, unfortunately, you, their assertion was that video was like your main mechanism in an attempt to show people that your product was beyond where that it was in an attempt to inflate the stock price.
And you know what's crazy? This is the crazy part. That video was 4 to 5 years prior to going public. This is when we were a private company. We were not raising money with that video. Never did.
It came out while you guys were still private?
Yeah, 5 years prior. And guess what? We had multiple fully functioning, drivable fuel cell trucks on the market, unveiled years prior to going public, and that were driving on the road. So like all that information was years and years and years and years old. It was completely outdated. And the government, and that's what they indicted me for. And I'm just like, how? Like, how is that? Like, how is information that's 4 years prior to going public when it were privately held, and it was replaced by new information with new vehicles on the road that were driving? So then you asked me, you're like, Trevor, did you ever think you'd be here? I'm like, hell no, because I never looked over my shoulder. My dad told me a saying when I was a kid. He always said, "A guilty man fleeth when no man pursueth." And I remember that, like, I was like, oh yeah, I haven't done anything wrong. Like, there's nothing wrong. I have nothing to worry about. If I would have had something to worry about, I would have stayed there and tried to essentially cover up whatever stuff that I had done wrong that I didn't do. But that's what you would do. If you were if you were a corrupt person, you wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, hey, here's the keys to the kingdom. By the way, you guys run it. I'm going to go help my wife and government. Feel free to look at whatever you want. Total mistake, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, my advice to any founder is never, ever give any power to anybody, ever. Own it and control it, because these guys will destroy. I mean, they'll come in, and mine ended up in an indictment, and we'll get into this. There's a lot of really crazy things that happen. So let's go back to essentially 2017, where this video was. This video got posted, and I never posted this video. This was the crazy part about this. This is what just barely came out. So just recently, a whistleblower came forward. This is after I've been, now it's fast forward after I've been indicted and, went through my sentencing and everything else, and I'm awaiting my appeal. One of the original employees in the company came forward and said, actually 3 of them now total have come forward and said, hey, you didn't even approve that. That was a chief legal counsel of the company that did that. And I'm like, well, tell me more about, refresh all of everyone's memory here. And this person was like, look, I was the one working on the social media. I was in charge of working with the different teams inside of the company. And I was instructed by the chief legal counsel to modify the wording on this video. And I guess there was some wording he didn't like. So this person went in and sat down with the chief legal counsel, and the attorney of the company at the time wrote the language in motion. And he says, this is my language. The next day, and we had these stand-up meetings every week, the few days later or whatever, that they were in the stand-up meeting, and some employees were like, hey, is in motion a correct for terminology? And this attorney, and I wasn't there, and the attorney's like, oh yeah, it's no problem. It's technically a correct statement. It is in motion.
Yeah. It's factually correct.
Doesn't say, it's factually correct. Doesn't say it's driving under its own power. It just says in motion, and it's a commercial. So no one takes commercials as some type of investment advice or whatever. So he again instructed the entire team, and 2 more people came forward. So that was 3 people. And he says, this is my wording. I'm approving it. And then he instructed that person to go post it, to actually post it online. I wasn't there for the shoot, and I did not post it or have it posted. So, you can't see everything as a chairman. You don't see everything going on. Mm-hmm. It's impossible. You have a marketing team doing their job. You don't review every single thing that they do. But it went out and no big deal. And what's crazy though is that in the trial and leading up to the trial, the company told the government that I was the one that essentially was behind the video and having it posted and using it. And so they had lied to the government to essentially allow the government to bring this into my trial. And the whistleblower just came forward, and that was actually one of the reasons why we have this big, derivative lawsuit against the officers and directors of the company, and also the malpractice suit against the attorney, who's still there, by the way, because they had a responsibility to the shareholders to tell the government the truth, and they didn't. They hid it, and they destroyed all. They hid everything, and then they gave the government bad information, so the government would indict me. And I'll go through that later. That was after I left. So,
what was the impact of the InMotion video when it first came out?
Nothing. A few hundred views.
I was going to say, was it well received? People were fired up about it because, like you said, it seems like 4 or 5 years later, it kicked off a firestorm, but nothing major when you first put it out.
No, it was like there was a few hundred views, maybe a few thousand views. I don't know. It wasn't even that big of a deal. It was just more, none of us thought it was anything at all. It was just like, cool, check out this truck. It can actually move. The steering worked, the power brakes worked, the battery worked, the e-axles worked, all the parts were there. We never commissioned them and turned them on and connected them all together into one system. A lot of them individually worked. And so we didn't think anything of it. It was no big deal because our other trucks, by the time we went public, had already been out and had been driving. We delivered a huge load of beer with Anheuser-Busch under fuel cell load on the highway. So it's like we had fully operational vehicles on the road prior to going public. So why does this thing matter from 4 years ago? Why would no one even cross your mind that would even be an issue? And so then Hindenburg then we go public, right? And we go public through a SPAC. It's called a special acquisition company. And it's kind of like a reverse merger. Mm-hmm. Allows you. So now we're in 2019. Okay. So we're fast forward up to 2019. we don't remember at this point, we had already built trucks. We had already been on the road driving. We had loads that were being delivered with it or a load with Anheuser-Busch of beer. And then, and then we were preparing to go public, and we brought this group in, and there was this group called Vecto IQ, which was a SPAC run by a guy from General Motors, and a guy named Steve Gursky, and he was the head of the SPAC. And so we merged with this to go public, and the company went parabolic. I mean, the whole market went nuts over electric vehicles. It was at the peak of Tesla going crazy, 2020. I mean, everything was going crazy in 2020. The pandemic had just started. So everyone thought like, oh, real estate's going to collapse. And then all of a sudden real estate doubled and whatever.
They didn't check the MLS up here. Holy shit. Hockey stick.
Really?
Oh, it just priced out all the locals because people fleeing states that they didn't want to be in. Sight unseen, hundreds of thousands of dollars over asking price, like off-market pocket listings. Insane.
I don't really know where all the money came from because, like, it happened like that in most states. Like,
yeah.
If you look at even in Utah, where I spent a lot of time, even out in the old farm country, there was homes that used to be $80,000, they were selling for $400,000, and you're like, where's this money coming from that allows people just to and it was everywhere.
Yeah, it was wild for sure. The locals are still pissed here. But it's also the median income here is $40,000 to $60,000 for a dual income family, and people are buying homes for nearly $1 million cash.
How do they afford it?
I don't know. I have the same question as you do. Like, okay, you're coming from a different state, but what do you do for a living? How are we paying for all of this?
30-something trillion in debt. I think it had to come from the mass money being pumped in the economy. I don't know.
I don't either.
Where does it? It doesn't just appear. So
I wasn't in the market, so I just was kind of popcorning it and just sitting back and watching it happen. I mean, I just was like, whoa, this is a little bit wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So the SPAC is an interesting one. That's the same way that Black Rifle went public, was through a SPAC as well. And so I have a little bit of understanding of the reverse merger. How much diligence does that company have to do before they merge with you, though? And then I ask because I'm assuming they're up your ass with a microscope on any claims you may be making, the viability of the business. I'm assuming that they need to do that or have to do that to go public.
Beyond that.
Okay.
It's every little thing you've ever done or said, everything about your life, everything about your prior companies, everything about your company, your intellectual property. We had more attorneys through that door. I mean, it was tens of millions of dollars in all these fees of groups coming in to analyze everything you can imagine. And does that include claims you're making about where you want the business to be and where the business is at that point? 100%. And the problem is that all that was disclosed in we talked about this being our business plan. So the problem I saw in the trial is what would happen is I would clarify something to one person, right? Like I'd be on this big show and I'd be like, and I'd clarify, I'd say, yeah, we're 2 years out before this is happening. And I'd make that statement. And then I would talk in the present tense. I'd be like, yeah, we got this fuel cell truck. We got this hydrogen station we're doing and da-da-da-da-da. I didn't think that was anything wrong with that. Like I didn't go to Harvard and Yale, remember. Like I thought if you clarified something up front and you gave like a, disclaimer or whatever, that people would know you're talking about the business plan. All of our SEC filings, so we had to file all this stuff with the government. Mm-hmm. So to answer your point, we had thousands of documents going into the SEC so that investors could read, investors or institutionals or the Motley Fool or whatever, could read them and they could give their opinion to the investor world. And so we had disclaimed all this, that we're 2 to 3 years out. We're this and this and this. The trucks are not ready for production. We're in the prototyping phase. We're 2 years out on hydrogen. There's all these risks associated with it. And we were very clear. And we talked about the business plan. We said in those documents, this is a crazy thing. In those documents, it uses the present tense. So this is done by the attorneys who went to Harvard and Yale. And they use it in the present tense all the time. So I'm getting on to, I go on to podcasts or whatever, and we talk, and some of them I clarify. I'm like, yeah, I'm referring to that, we're 2 years out, we're 3 years out or whatever. And some of them I don't, because I'm like, well, it's already been said 100 times. How many more times do I need to tell someone that I'm talking about the business plan? I mean, I didn't know every single conversation I ever had. I got to requalify this and spend half the time talking just on statements, just on qualifications, so the government's happy.
Well, you also, as the CEO, though, had a team of people underneath you. And this is something that was kind of a theme that came up throughout as well. You had teams of people that were dedicated to listening and observing to the things that you were doing and providing that correction if needed. And there's two very different sides of the story. There, in your countersuit, it's like you guys were giving me incredibly positive feedback. And in one of these, it's like, no, we were really worried about what he was saying. But I can't find anywhere in this where they were actually approaching you and saying, Trevor, stop doing this, or this, that, or the other.
Not one documented time in history did they ever approach me about anything, with exception to a single tweet, single text where the legal counsel had said, hey, I know what you meant. You're okay. You just got to be careful walking that line.
And those people still, and again, I don't know shit about public companies, but they have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholder as well.
Not only that, but they have a requirement with it immediately to fix it if they think there's confusion. So this is really crazy, because as we go through this SPAC, I'm going to get into this. This is where it gets real. The meat gets really interesting. As we go through this SPAC, we go public. All this stuff's disclosed, right? And this is interesting because it's important, because what we did is we disclosed everything to everybody. We even gave like our business plan information, how we were rolling it out, like the risks associated, the hydrogen stations, everything else. In trial, the government claimed that retail investors are a different breed and they don't read anything. So what they did is they said, yeah, you actually provided the correct information to institutional investors, but retail investors, they're stupid.
What do they classify as a retail investor?
Good question. No one knows. So here the government had set a new standard inside of the Southern District of New York on my case, where they essentially said that like retail investors are too stupid to read documents. So they essentially said that I had defrauded retail investors. But even though all of our filings were correct and they never claimed once that our filings ever had anything wrong with them ever. And by the way, they never claimed a single dollar was missing ever. Not $1. They never claimed a single document was ever wrong or forged or anywhere. Out of the millions of documents we did, nothing, not one. So they couldn't find anything wrong with the documents, anything wrong with the SEC, filings that we do, anything wrong with our disclosures, anything wrong with finances, anything wrong with me, like my personal life or anything else. So what do? They decided this is how we're going to indict him. And this is crazy, because this is like what you're seeing now in the world is they just. Have you ever heard that phrase? I think it's "Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime."
Yes,
I think it was a ruler, a leader, a ruler of a place that said this, and it was so apparent because what's crazy here is they decided, okay, we can't. There's nothing really. There's no money missing. There's not a dollar missing. Not $1. Not a dollar misappropriated. Never a dollar taken from the company given to me that I didn't log. Nothing. Absolutely clear, crystal clear. Like, I'm Mother Teresa clear on how well we did. Everything was nothing was missing. Nothing was wrong. Filings were correct. Everything. And the government said, even though the filings, the SEC were used present tense, done by world-class Harvard lawyers, the government said, well, the filings are correct. And you did disclose, but retail investors are too stupid to read them. So
is that somehow putting the accountability and responsibility on you for somebody not reading a document that they're going to invest in?
Yes. And that's the problem I ran into is in this trial. And look, my judge, it was Judge Ramos, actually a really pleasant guy. I think he came from Puerto Rico. I think he had some family from Puerto Rico. I used to live in Puerto Rico when I was a kid, a little while when I was younger in my teens. I got to learn Spanish in Puerto Rico also, and I live in a place called Ponce and Rincon. It's like this area down on the bottom of the curve where you can surf, and I'm terrified of sharks, dude. So
don't go in the water.
No, that's why.
Zero chance of get bit by a shark in Montana. You're so
true.
good.
It's true. Did you hear about the guy who just died in Hawaii? The famous surfer.
I mean, that's because famous surfers are out where famous sharks are.
That's
I bet you they
good point.
I bet you they have.
I never connected those. But.
I mean, I feel like the sharks are down there like, yeah, I've got 3 under my belt, and the guy's like, hold my beer, and just mauls somebody.
I almost wonder if they looked at it and they're just like, I wonder how many times he's had a close call and didn't know it.
Oh, I know.
So that's what scares me. So I'm like terrified of sharks. So I went to Puerto Rico because I was told, and it actually, I think it's relatively true, that there's almost no sharks in Puerto Rico off of the in Ponce and Rincon. Rincon, it's like this spot down, like it's called the corner. So Rincon means like corner.
Yeah.
And it's I think that's what it means. Man, I'm a Spanish, been in a long time.
Michael, what does it mean?
Look up Rincon. Look up Rincon. I think it means corner. But if it doesn't, I'm really sorry to everyone.
Yeah.
And I used to live down there, and a beautiful place. I mean, one of the most beautiful places in the United States. I mean, the beaches are unbelievable. And Ramos was
A small secluded valley.
a bend in the river.
Yeah, a bend, yeah.
Okay, or a recess in a cliff. Okay, well,
That affordable new truck offer better be real. That shit looks like a Mid-Journey image to me.
Indictment waiting to happen.
How fucking hilarious is it that is somehow attached? We're sorry, NSA and CIA. We're just joking.
It's like pulling up everything.
There it is.
Real-time demonstration that everything is listening at all the time.
They are listening.
Oh,
right?
I know.
So we got my judge is actually incredibly pleasant. The guy's got a good demeanor to him. He's a very kind of calm, collected judge. He's not an outlandish or loud or anything. He's, as a matter of fact, you kind of have to push him to talk because he was very very kind of calm and collective and doing his own thing. And so we go into this trial, and it's like, the prosecutors are essentially telling the judge that there's a difference between that the judge should allow him to use this video from 4 years prior to us going public, that when we were privately held. And the judge is like, where's the how is this relevant to this time period, And it's kind of interesting because they said, well, we're going to use it to it's called I think it's called 404B or something, but it's additional evidence that can show that you do bad conduct, even though it has nothing to do with the case at the time or whatever.
Oh, it's supposed to be like shows additional type of character, either good or bad.
Yeah,
gotcha.
And ultimately, it only goes one way, though. It's only like you're not allowed to show good character. Only bad is allowed in ever.
No philanthropy.
No,
but check out this.
Nothing good you ever done in your life is allowed in trial. It's only the stuff they, So
that checks out.
The interesting thing about trials, I'll tell people this. There's and this is really, really crazy. The government gets to choose 95 or 98% of everything that comes in the trial, and the defense gets to choose like 2%.
Why is that the case?
It's because the judges trust the prosecutors immensely. And this is what happened in my trial. And you'll actually see it in the appeal. This is an important one because the prosecutors knew that they could take advantage of the judge's trust with him. And in our appeal, you'll hear about that, how they took advantage knowing the judge had given the wrong instructions to the jury. And then they instructed the jury in their closing arguments to convict me just based upon if they thought I even lied. So that's not the standard to convict someone. And they actually told the jury that. So we're going to get into this really. But what's interesting is that the judges trust the prosecutors immensely. And pretty much whatever prosecutors want, 99% of the time, if you looked at all the rulings, probably 90+%, they're going to get approved for everything they want. And the defense will be denied over 90% of the time. So it's just like you go into this justice system, and it's no longer like, okay, it's going to be down the middle and you get to prove your point and they get to prove theirs. It's not how it works. It's government comes and says, this is what we're indicting you with, and this is the story we're going to tell, and we get to tell it to the jury, and you don't get to say a word, and you don't get to bring in anything at all. Like, I wanted to show the jury the trucks. So the whole claim at trial was, oh, your trucks are fake. Mm-hmm. I wanted to show the jury the trucks. Well,
why would they not allow that?
They wouldn't allow it.
Why?
I don't know, dude. It's like, this is the crazy part. Like, I'm like, what do you mean I can't show the jury the trucks? They're claiming the trucks are fake.
It's like telling somebody, like, you don't have $20. You're trying to convince a group of people, like, this person's broke, he has no money. Well, I'm going to pull my wallet out and show you some bills, and they say you can't do that.
Yeah. Once again, the prosecutors, the judges give the prosecutors whatever they want because they trust them. And this judge I think he was actually a former prosecutor at one time. So it's kind of like law enforcement or in your world, SEALs, right? You're going to trust a SEAL over another person 100 to 1, even just because you know what they've been through. And so, unfortunately, you always get that there's a couple bad actors in there, right? Like in the SEAL, like there are bad people that in every
I got
division.
A list of them. It's not quite this thick, but it might be this thick. Oh, they exist.
Yeah.
When we go bad, we go real bad.
Yeah, real bad, right? Yeah, for real. And that's what happens here is that like not all the prosecutors are bad, but some of them know they can take advantage of the system and guarantee a conviction. I mean, look, New York is 96% conviction rate. That's North Korea. That's like
pretty high.
That's like Japan, North Korea level of guarantee. Like you don't have a chance of being innocent in Southern District of New York.
Does that also point towards them not picking cases
No.
that they think that they have a potential of losing? Like,
No, it's actually that's how they sell it. That's how the world sells it. Is it like, oh, they're the best in the world? It's actually if you were to try the Southern District cases in let's just say Montana or Arizona, 70% of them would lose. It's because
that doesn't bode well for our legal system.
No, it doesn't, and it's scary. And like, look, I don't care what happens. I mean, I do care. I mean, I love my family and I love my life. At this point, I'm done. It's not for me. It's what I'm afraid of, and what I worry about is what your best friend or your family or your wife or her cousin or your nephew does. And it's something super. There's nothing he even did wrong. Never even knew he was doing something wrong, and they throw him in prison for 20 years. And this is what needs to stop, and it needs to. And if the appellate courts don't do the right thing and finally step up and just say, "Listen, we have to put a stop to this," and the Supreme Court, then we're all done. Because look how quickly it's going. I mean, they went after. Look at what they're doing now. They're targeting Supreme Court justices that they don't agree. Look, I've not agreed with Supreme Court justices for 25 years.
Yeah.
You know, from the time I could remember in my life that certain things mattered, I never targeted them.
I tend to not agree with about half the people in the United States because that's about how it splits.
Yeah.
Left and right ideology, whatever it may be, and that's just kind of what it is. Also, have never targeted them.
Yeah, you don't target, and that's the thing is it's you don't target them just because you don't agree with them, and that's not what's happening now. Is now that they are, if they don't agree with you, they will target you and they will destroy you and your life and your family. I mean, look, my wife has been, because of her sicknesses now, the slightest amount of stress can send her body into, her blood sugar can hit 35 in the morning, whatever, and then it'll go up to 300 in just an hour or two.
Yeah.
And it's like those swings are enough to kill anybody, to go into a coma. And any stress can just trigger that. And I've seen it. Sometimes it'll hit 3-4 times a day, and she's pounding insulin to keep her blood sugar levels. And then all of a sudden now her pancreas starts working, and all of a sudden it drops down to 30.
Yeah.
And it's like, they don't realize the damage that they do to families. And they go out and they go drinking afterwards and they party and they talk about how they indicted these people and they took these people down. They don't realize that I've spent, it was actually interesting when I go into my sentencing with the judge, I was not allowed to bring any of this into trial. So the government could claim everything they wanted to about me, pretty much, almost everything, about everything they thought I did bad. I wasn't allowed to share anything with the jury. So there's one reason why I didn't testify. Why testify? You're not allowed to say anything, right? Like,
would they have just objected to?
Yeah, they would have stopped me from saying it. And so, like, I lived in Brazil when I was younger. Lived in the favelas down in Brazil. I learned Portuguese, fluently. I still speak about 90% fluent. I just, because it's been 20 years, I've forgotten. I've forgotten a lot. I lived in the favelas. I absolutely loved it. I taught people English. I helped them with some religious stuff to try to get people some hope. And I spent my life serving other people. When I went public, I gave away over half of my company and my employees. Tell me who else does that. I gave everything away. I didn't want the money. I didn't care about it. I mean, obviously it's nice to have because I can go build more companies to help more people, right? Mm-hmm. So my idea always has been is, how do I help as many people in my life as I can? And I've done it my whole life. Anyone who knows me personally would tell you that, like, there's not a person ever that is on the side of the road I don't stop for to help. There's no one that needs, if someone comes across my path that needs help in this life, if I know I'm not doing them harm, I will help them. Even then I still struggle to say no, because I have this belief that, like, we're not the judges of what they do with how we help them. Like, it is my responsibility, regardless of what they do, to help someone. And so it's like, I have this profound belief. I grew up very, very in a very loving family with an incredible mother that I watched die in front of me with cancer. And I mean, it was just pain my whole childhood. It was really rough and very poor. We had nothing. There was days where we'd go without food, and I'd go eat at friends' houses. My dad was working in Vegas trying to make enough just to even pay our rent. We went through hell, and I really know what it was like to go. I remember I was wrestling in high school, and I don't think I even won a match. I mean, it was that bad.
That's a rough path.
It was rough, man.
Sounds like Michael's journal through grappling. He's a power bottom.
And some of it was because I'd go into these meets, and you'd be, you didn't have 24 hours of, not eating.
Yeah.
And I had no strength in my body, and I'd go to school, and then I actually had to work. I wasn't a kid that I didn't just get spoon fed. So I'd go and I'd move irrigation lines or go to the farm and help milk the cows or whatever. And I'd go deliver newspapers. And I'd working all day just to make ends meet for me and my family. And none of this the jury was allowed to hear, nothing. So what the jury got to do is all they get to do is hear how evil of a person you are from the moment you walk in that door. They don't get the context of who you really are. And then the government gets to tell everything evil about you. It doesn't even matter if it's lies. The government can just lie to the jury, and you're not allowed to object because it's their right to essentially frame you how they want to the jury, and that's the way our justice system is built.
Are they allowed to object when your defense team is up there trying to paint the other side of that picture?
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're allowed to object because, both sides can object. We objected to everything, but the judge would just, no, it approved. Come, you can bring it in, whatever you want. Video from 5 years ago, bring it in, no big deal. They had an expert that came in that was no expert. It was an absolute the disaster is to say is a nice word.
The social media expert.
A social media expert, and in a jury's mind, an expert's the most credible witness in the entire trial. And
hence the expert,
hence the word expert.
Yeah. And
this person was a social media expert that never qualified under any of the requirements to be an expert, and they still let her in. And look, give credit to the judge. I will say this: like the guy's got I think he has a good heart. I think he's been around too many bad people in his life to really believe that there's innocent people being run through the system. But I will tell you this: it's interesting. Is he even said at my sentencing when he allowed me to stay out on bail. The prosecutors got quite mad. They were objecting, like, "This is outrageous."
They wanted you.
Oh, they wanted me in prison. And the judge is like, "Listen, there are major problems that happen in this trial, and I've even come to learn at my on my own expense. Essentially, he uses the word I think chagrin or something like that. One of them Yale words that
I vaguely know the definition of that one.
I think it's chagrin. Chagrin. Yeah,
we're both probably right.
By the way,
depends on where you're from.
Do you want to pull that up? Because I actually had to ask my attorney what it meant.
Do you know how to spell it, Michael?
Chagrin.
Yep.
I know how to spell it now because I had to read it 100 times. But chagrin. Okay. This has got a lot of big words in it.
Disquietude or distress of mind caused by humiliation, disappointment, or failure. So he could be saying like through my own failure, essentially.
Yep.
Yeah,
he says I've learned that certain experts should have never been allowed in trial.
So the judge said that.
The judge said this at my sentencing. And what is said by the judge is taken way more valuable to the appellate court than anything else because they trust the judges to actually be honest in the trials.
I was going to say I feel like that should be the case.
And it was interesting when he said that because the prosecutors put their heads in their hands and they're like, "Oh shiz, crap."
Looking into their crystal ball into the future.
Well, they realized that statement alone was a huge problem because they knew how bad that expert witness should have never been allowed in that trial ever. And all this expert witness did is brought in hearsay from all these people on there was like people with like, okay, just need to be let's disclaim this here for all the listeners. If bad words scare you or whatever, just don't, just plug your ears for a minute. But there was like people online that were commenting and there was like Big Dick John or something. I mean, these like crazy, like different, I don't remember what they were. It's been forever, but there was like all these different names of people that were like some user. Yeah. And they were showing this to the jury and they're like, essentially claiming things about me that were bad. And the jury got to read this stuff. And it's called hearsay. There's a reason why it's not allowed in a courtroom because I can't confront the person that wrote it.
I bet you they couldn't even determine if what was written was real, meaning from a person.
They couldn't. We actually claimed it could be a bot. We don't know. It could be written by a bot that's out there to either short the stock to cause it to go down or to go up. So you don't know who's writing these comments. They could be fake. They could be photoshopped. They could be anything. And we objected heavily to this, like huge. We told the judge, like, Your Honor, this is actually, I think 3 times, and we moved for a mistrial over it. And the judge just denied it because, look, it's not because he wanted to see me convicted. I think he's actually got a good heart. It's because he trusted the prosecutors.
Yeah.
And they took advantage of everything they could to destroy me. They didn't care if it was an innocent person. They don't. They don't care at all. They want to see a certain person suffer if they don't like you.
What surprised me about the social media expert is that she referred to the data and to the research, but didn't actually show the data or research that she was referencing. And again, I've never been in a court case. I don't know anything. Got my Juris Doctorate by watching Law and Order. I feel like these people are prepped as to what they're going to be asked and what they're going to talk about. And my big thing when people make accusations is just bring the receipts. Just show me your receipts. Like, where is this data? What are you talking about?
Dude, you're actually like really, you're really good. Most people it takes a long time for people to understand these different points that are important in trial. And I never knew them before going into this 4 year of, literally like a college degree of hell, right?
Yeah.
What's interesting is you're right. An expert, there's a word, another big word that I think is called the Dobar, or something like that. It's like this standard.
Michael. Good. I have no idea how to. It starts with a D.
I'll try.
D-O? Fill in the blank.
Daubert.
Yeah.
It's the most famous case of hearsay of expert witness in the world.
Oh, in the legal system?
In the legal system. So every single court, pretty much, most of them, uses this case as the benchmark for what an expert witness should be.
Oh, my God.
Dober.
So
standard.
for people who are not watching, I was incorrect in my spelling. It was D-A-U, not D-O. Michael pulled it out of his pants pocket. The Dober standard provides a systematic framework for a trial court judge to assess the reliability and relevance of expert witness testimony before it is presented to a jury. Established in 93, U.S. Supreme Court case Dober v. Merrill, Dow Pharmaceuticals.
That's all you need to know.
Okay.
That's it. That's all you need to know. It's the standard every court uses. And there's like 4 different elements that they have to meet. She didn't meet one. The only thing credential she had was essentially she was a professor, a PhD professor in some school in California.
Yeah.
But she had never testified at trial. She had never written her own. She was referencing different publications she didn't even write, which is not allowed to be brought in as her statement. So an expert's only allowed to testify to help a jury make a decision of a subject. That's it. This expert came in and essentially just just went off on this rail like crazy. If you read the actual trial transcript, our appellate attorney read it and she's like, I've never in my life seen, this is unbelievable. Like, I don't even know the wording for this. Like, this expert she's not an expert and she should never been allowed even near the Southern District.
And the jury is sitting there and they don't know, do they?
No. By the way, all this is objected to before it even comes in. So we throw this huge fit over it with the judge, and what does the judge do? He looks over the prosecutors, and the prosecutor's like, no, she's totally qualified. So what does the judge do? Stamps it. Okay, sounds good. She comes on in. So we make this huge objection over it. She should have never been allowed in. It allowed hundreds of comments of hearsay about me that were completely false. Stuff about pumping the stock and taking advantage of retail investors and all kinds of stuff. Like they could find any comment some Russian bot had made, and then they used it in my trial. And then the government told the judge, well, Your Honor, it's not used for the truth. It's just to show that it was affecting the market. Well, then if it's not used for the truth, why are you showing it to the jury? Mm-hmm. That's absurd.
It's also only one side of a conversation.
There you go. One comment pulled out of everything. And so the jury was, this expert came in, just laid all this out to the jury, and the jury was just like, oh my gosh, this guy is the most evil man in the world, when none of this should have been allowed in. This is why hearsay is precluded, but it's a backdoor to hearsay. The only way to get hearsay in is through an expert witness.
Oh, interesting.
So it's the backdoor way of cheating the system, and that's what they did. Look, you got to give it to them. They knew how to win. They know how to win a system, and unfortunately, it doesn't matter how much money you have. They're gonna win. So if you get indicted in the Southern District, you're gonna the only hope you have is the appellate court to give you a fair shot, and that's if you get fair judges.
Yeah. Go back in time for me into where the indictments came from. I think we were in 17 before we dove into the court case a little bit.
So 2020, actually. So 2017 to 20 is when we were still privately held, leading up to the going public. And there's not that much going on in that time. It's just building product, moving to Arizona, building our headquarters, building our factory, or starting. When I say building, that means to start.
Yep.
Make sure I qualify that so I don't get indicted again over something. And it was so ultimately that was kind of those 3 years. What really is big is 2020. That's when the SPAC came in. We merged with them, and I was the chairman at the time, and I was the CEO. And the new board told me, we can't have. And my dad was on the board because I trust him a lot. And they said, no, you can't have your dad on the board. And I said, why? This is a guy I confide in who's got more integrity than anyone in this room. So tell me why I shouldn't have a person with an enormous amount of integrity here guiding me. Nope, can't have your dad. It's a conflict.
Is that a standard thing they would say for?
No, it's
anybody?
bullshit. I mean, look, Elon's got his brother on the board. I mean, the thing is what it was a first move I didn't recognize of them trying to take power from it to take over the company.
They were trying to move an ally.
Yeah, they're trying to ally it to their side, and I didn't see it because I just didn't. I just believed in the good in people, and it's probably the biggest thing I've learned is, unfortunately, most people are not good. Some are, and there's a lot of great people in this world. I love when I meet those people.
I think most people are good. I think the ones who have malicious intent are more active. So you encounter them more often.
That could be.
I think they're more predatory.
They're more predatory. That makes more sense. They're more like they're out there more, so you encounter a lot more of it.
Statistically, I think they're less, but they're just out there and they're just out there creating chaos.
That makes sense. Kind of like a lion. It's like you got good. You might have good good cats, and you got the lions that are out there and they're out there, murdering the herds.
Well, it's kind of like social media. There are super vocal minorities that have no representation of the middle ground. Because the middle ground people are like, I'm actually just living my life and I don't have time for this bullshit. So it can make it seem as if everybody feels that way, but it's a small minority of people that are just yip, 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 yip the entire time.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about it that way, but they're more active, they're more predatory, and so that they're in more areas you encounter them more. That's actually a good way of I'd probably need to revise.
It helps me
still believe in humanity.
Trust me, with my old job, it's tough to have faith in humanity. I do my best. I don't trust people, but I do my best.
It gets harder as time goes on.
It does.
Because I grew up in a small town, and I was raised that like your word is everything, and if you got to walk 10 miles to return something, you do.
Yeah.
And if you break your word, you better go fix it, and you better repair the damage. And so like I grew up in this world where I just believed that. Most people are raised like this, and they're not.
I wish that was the world that we live in. I wish I could raise my kids in that world where they could have absolute faith in the goodness of others. And the problem is both you and I know, those people out there who want everything but that.
The predators.
And that's what they do. Predators prey.
They're predators. And that's what it's almost like you have to, maybe get your kids, so where they know the predators exist at a young age, and then move them away into a town where the word means something. Because it's like, the problem is I came from a town where your word means everything, and then you go into the world of predators and you believe them.
Yeah, you have to be conditioned to know that they exist. Otherwise, they'll take advantage of you.
That was my thing. And so we go, all right, we're getting ready to go public, right? We have this big SPAC. We go public. I take my dad off the board, and I bring in neutral board members, and this company starts to go awesome. It's going great, right? And we have all the disclosures out to all the shareholders. Everything's there. Everyone knows that we're 3 years until production and 3 years until hydrogen stations are going to go online. And we're building, prototype versions of these stations and trucks and everything else. So like everything's disclosed. It's awesome. And bam, all of a sudden Nikola goes parabolic. It goes from like, $3 billion to $34 billion.
What was the match that lit that?
It was the electric vehicle craze. We hit it like it's like a wave. If you're going to surf,
it was more like the social lexicon.
Yeah, it was just exactly. It was like the hockey stick. Just no reason whatsoever other than the market was going parabolic on electric vehicles.
What is that like sitting in the CEO seat and you're looking at this like, guys? Am I the only one seeing this?
So this is crazy. This is where all this stuff comes in. This is where the story. Now the audience has this background of kind of like where I came from. We'll tie these like 3 or 4 subjects into one now and really explain. And I stepped down from the CEO because they didn't want me as a CEO and the chairman.
That was advice from external people as well?
Yes, once again, the people I trusted. So I went to become, I was just chairman then. And so the CEO was there and he was running the company, and I'd go out and give comments. We had a lot of really awesome board members that had a lot of connections, and they had me on these board members. You'll actually see it, and this is public information, so I can talk about it because it's in the complaint. You guys can go to just a very simple thing. You just go to trevormilton.com, which is it just shows the complaint and my appeal. That's it. There's nothing else.
The documents essentially in front of us?
That's it.
Okay.
Nothing else. It's not a website about me. It's my website, but it just says the documents and the appeal. That's it. The complaint and the appeal. In the complaint, what's crazy is that the board was telling me how great of a job I was doing. So I was going on all these big shows, right? I was going on the podcast, news, everything else.
The Richard Branson strategy.
So one of the board members had said, got together with the guy from the SPAC, so there was a board member who got together with Steve Gursky from the SPAC, and they were talking about how I connected so well with retail investors and that Richard Branson had done a really good job of this and we should really cultivate the retail investment. And they were telling me how good of a job I was. Like, that was an incredible interview, best interview you had. That was amazing. We got to get you out there with the retail investors. You really hit it home. You're not going to really connect with the institutionals, but you're going to connect with the retail. And, once again, that's a hit on me because they're saying you don't have Harvard, you're not Yale, you're stupid, you're a dumb white, person from a small town. You're not worthy of the institutional investors. You're too stupid for them. But the retail investors love you. So I'm like, cool, I'll just do my job. I'll do the best I can to help the company. And so I send the chief legal counsel and other people in the company, I send them a message and I said, I need, and this is in there, I said, I need an SEC attorney. I don't know what I can and can't say. Like, I need someone who can review my stuff and make sure that we don't get in trouble. So I beg them for an SEC attorney. It's actually in there, and you'll see. You guys can see this. I beg that it'll come out in the lawsuit and everything else. But I beg them for an SEC attorney. And I said I need to know what we can and can't talk about, and I need an SEC. I mean, this is me pleading for them. And because I didn't know, I was surrounded by people that ran public companies. Our CEO had, and so I'm relying on these people, and they're telling me how good of a job I'm doing. So, I'm speaking in the present tense sometimes, but I'm talking about the business plan. It's like if I'm, I do it all the time on it. I don't mean it wrong. Like, there's no intent to hurt someone. Like, I do it in my private life all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm doing such, I'm doing this, I'm doing this when not really, like, I'm in the process of it. Doesn't mean I've done it. Yeah. It's like, just everyone does it sometimes more than others. But they were telling me how great of a job I was doing. Not a single correction ever from any of them. None, not one ever documented correction ever. The only thing that ever came close to that was the chief legal officer's like, hey, I know there was a tweet where someone had asked about the Badger being, we launched this pickup truck, and I'll get into this in a minute. And there's someone was like, hey, when's that going to be produced? I'm like, oh, it's already, because I was talking about I thought they were talking about when's that prototype going to be built. That's what I thought they were meaning. And I said, oh, already. And the legal officer, he sent me a text. He monitored everything I did. And as soon as I put that up, he sent me a text. He says, hey, you got to be careful about that because it could be misunderstood. And I said, well, I was talking about the prototype being built. And do I need to correct it or am I good? And he says, no, you're fine. I know what you meant. So here I am. It's called advice of counsel. What else am I supposed to do? I'm listening to, it's like listening to your commander, right? Your commander tells you to hit the button and you hit it and it kills someone and then you go to prison for it. And you're like, I just listen. I'm required to listen to this person.
Unless the order is unlawful.
Yeah, but how do you know? I mean, you're hitting the
orphanage, maybe. School bus full of blind children. I don't know. There's some examples I could think of.
Yeah, I guess. But how do you see that? Right? Is that if you're just an operator, if you're just here I am just listening to my my chief legal officer telling me, hey, this is what you need to do, and this is okay, and I don't need to correct it in the market because it's not a misstatement.
Have you put them through the discovery process yet? Because I'm curious what their defense to that is going to be. Do you think they're going to try to provide internal communication that you were not a part of, showing that there was concern?
There was some internal communication of some employees that brought up things about how they were saying like, hey, Trevor's using the tense or the wrong tense of verb, but we all know what he means. Do we need to correct this? And I wasn't privy. By the way, I was never CC'd on any of these.
Yeah.
And it went up to the CEO and the CFO and the chief legal officer, and none of them had an issue. Not one effing person ever had an issue with that. And they had these employees were emailing them, like head of marketing. Hey, do we have an issue with this? No, we're good.
Yeah.
Full approval. The chief legal officer approved it afterwards. So I rely on these guys to make sure I'm like, look, your job is, I'm going to make the statements out there about what I'm trying to talk about the business plan. Your job is to clarify anything that doesn't come out right.
I'm curious what their defense will be to that. Because if you can't show me the receipts that you had huge internal strife and we were warning this person and we were trying to correct their behavior, if you don't have that, what are you talking about?
So here's where it gets into the indictment. This is where we go public, and then this big Hindenburg report comes out. And
what was the flash to bang from public to Hindenburg report?
2 or 3 months.
So shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
Damn. Okay.
We go from $10 a share up to $90 a share. It's $34 billion, and Hindenburg hits because they know they're going to make $100 million on the short. They just put out all these outlandish things and make all these wild claims about me. I mean, there's stuff in there you wouldn't even believe. None of it's true.
And for people listening, and I'm not a sophisticated investor, short selling is basically where you're betting that the price of the commodity is going to go down.
Yep.
You get money as it decreases. Problem with that is it can increase forever and you can lose your ass.
Yeah, and the hard part is short selling is actually illegal in most of the world. In the U.S., it's not. And here's the problem, though, is the short sellers are trading on insider information, and what they'll do is they'll get and which is a felony, and the government doesn't care. They look the other way. They're like best friends with these short sellers. They love them because the short sellers give them these big, like salacious articles, and then they go, and then the short seller comes out, and the government comes in and indicts them immediately after.
It's like chumming the water.
Chumming the water. And they're connected really close. They actually talk to each other, which I don't understand how that's even legal. Like how do the short sellers have access to the prosecutors? This is beyond me.
That seems like a conflict of interest in every sense of the word.
A very big problem. It's almost like they're dealing with the criminals, and they're letting the criminals commit felonies, and then they just look the other way, and they're like, "Well, you're helping us create media storms, so we don't care what you do. Keep doing what you do. You just give us the media storm, and we'll chum the water, and we'll indict the person." So Hindenburg came out, whatever. Didn't even like everyone inside of Nikola was just kind of like almost laughing about it. They was just like, "This is stupid. This is the dumbest thing we've ever heard. Nothing in here is even true." All the internal communications of the company were like, "Yeah, none of this is true. We're not even worried about it. We're just gonna ignore it because it's stupid. It'll go away in a day or two." And then I had my wife was getting so sick at the time. I just couldn't. She was like on her deathbed. She wasn't even like getting out of bed. She was so sick. And I had to make a choice. I was like, look, I had already told the board I was going to retire in about 3 months. In December of 2020, I was going to retire. Mm-hmm. So this is August, right? I guess August, September, October, November, 4 months later. So I was already told the board I was going to retire in 4 months. So I was like, you know what? No big deal. 4 months early, like it'll take the pressure off all the media stupid stuff. Little did I know that it made it look like somehow that I was guilty. I just like, no big deal. It's 4 months early, whatever. You guys deal with it.
Timing wasn't optimal from an optic perspective.
No, it wasn't. But you know how when your family comes into play, you don't care about timing.
Yeah, you start losing track of what day it is in the calendar.
You don't care. And when your wife is, you don't know if you're going to come home and your wife's going to be dead. You don't give a flying crap about like whether or not optics is good or bad. I honestly didn't think she was going to make it. There was days where, she just wasn't there because her.
I tell you what, I've never been in a position like you've been in, and maybe one day I'll be financially independent, but people could have every penny that I have if I could have more time with my wife and kids. I don't give a shit about what I was walking away from.
Yep. And what was hard is, I watched my mom die of cancer when I was 14. She got down to about, I think she was around maybe 60 or 70 pounds.
I had the same experience with my mom.
Her arm was this thick. That was it. It was as thin as I could wrap my hand around it.
What type of cancer did she have?
Started with breast cancer, and then it moved into her bones and everywhere else.
My mom had cervical cancer that metastasized into her lungs.
Ugh. Dude, I remember her coughing up blood down her face. Yep. And I remember her just like just the sweetest woman on earth. And I had a really hard time as a young kid trying to understand how this could happen to a sweet person when the evil people are being rewarded. It was really tough. And she died in front of me. And then my dad, a few years later, my dad was able to find another great woman. He got married, and my stepmom died of cancer too. And I was just like, dude, screw this. It's one reason why I've gone really healthy in my life. I've tried to I'm not perfect, but I try to eat really, really good food and really try to stay as healthy as I can around things. I stopped drinking. I used to drink multiple Red Bull, like 3-4 Red Bulls a day. And
I'm sure they appreciate that.
They did. Made a lot of money on. I would go to Costco.
Let's be honest.
And
the Red Bull helicopter is not coming and flying around because people aren't buying the product.
No,
they need you to. Those are rookie numbers. They need you on a 6-pack a day.
I was a pallet. I was buying pallets from Costco, dude.
And like the truck's out back. Can you guys just forklift this thing for me?
Seriously, I'm not kidding. I have photos buying pallets going to the lake. Like it was.
That's problematic.
It was.
I would have pulled you aside, Trevor. We have to talk.
And I luckily had I had a wife that was very conscious as well, and I decided I'm off, and I've been off everything for 5 years. I haven't had anything at all 5 years, and I was like, you know what? It's not that I think that people shouldn't be able to have drink. I have no problem with that. It's I wanted to know I could control myself. That was all it was. It was like I want to be healthy. I just want to control myself, and but it was a big deal. So long story short is that I watched my mom get sick and die. I watched my stepmom get sick and die. And here I was watching my wife get sick and about ready to die because I've seen what it's like to look at someone on the edge of death.
Yep.
Not just once, more than one time. And it's not fun. The eyes are gone. The glaze is there. There's
Yep.
there's no logic anymore. They don't process.
They're hollow.
And it's it's enough to give me. I've been through it too much in my life. Like I don't need a third. Like and people had it worse than me. I know people are getting bombed all over the world and losing their families. And I every day for what prayers I do give to God, I give to, I ask that the insanity stop. These people somehow, the bad people go and the good people stay. That's all I ask for. Because I'm just tired. Like it's really hard to see that. And
all I ask for is that he puts me there so I can handle it for him.
I would love for him to.
That's all I want. It's a different type of prayer. I'm not religious at all by any stretch, but if I were to pray, that's what I would pray for.
I would pray that you would be there doing it for me.
God, I love that job. It's like, oh, hi, evil. Knock, knock.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. And
it's
so
fulfilling.
It is. And so that was the whole point is I just didn't care at that moment, whether it was bad optics or good optics. My wife came first.
Yeah.
And little did I know that my freedom would be taken away. Now, if I would have known that, I would have said, listen, I don't care. I'm just going to stay here and get through this and then I'll go, whatever. So what happened is when I left, there was a huge vacuum. There was a vacuum and these people wanted my power really bad because now all of a sudden they had $1 billion in cash because there's almost $1 billion in the bank. I think we had about $700 or $800 million in the bank at that time.
That's got to be pretty awesome to go to the ATM, which is what I would do. Screw the computer screen. I'd go to the ATM and print out the receipt and be like, do you guys see this?
Yeah.
This is a lot of zeros.
It was a lot of zeros. And I was very careful about how we spent it with the company. We did very well. And the people that came in, they had a different idea. The government had given a subpoena to the company because of the Hindenburg report.
Okay.
And the company came in with a huge. When I was there, the company came out and with press releases, everything backing me up. Internally, had admitted there was nothing wrong anywhere ever. All of them admitted there was nothing wrong. And I thought I had zero risk. I'm like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. It's fine. I don't care. Like I said, a guilty man fleeth with no man pursueth. No problem. I mean, I'm not fleeing. Here you go. You guys can do it all. You can do the whole investigation you want. You can see that nothing happened. And I truly believed in our justice system at that point. And that was the last time I ever believed in our justice system. That was the end of it. So what happened at that time is the company, and you'll see it in the complaints, the company decided to essentially try to destroy evidence. There is certain interview notes that I know existed between employees that they told the company. And these employees came forward and told me about it, that the company never turned over to the government and they don't exist. Essentially showing that I was innocent throughout this, multiple things, like certain events the government indicted me on would have proven without a shadow of a doubt I was not guilty. And the company, what they did is the company interviewed all the employees first so they could destroy all the evidence first. Then they handed over those notes that some of them were modified and deleted and destroyed. Then they gave their version that they wanted to do, and they got together and they decided they were going to just frame me. And the reason why we know that is there was this is crazy. This is what's going to come out in the trial. They had told the employees that they were interviewing step by step how they wanted to frame me. So they would tell employees, hey, we need to make up a fake narrative. We need to make up a narrative about Trevor. And I know it doesn't matter. Like, we just need a story. We need something.
Did they commit this to like electronic means?
Fucking idiots well, what happened?
That's some Jason Bourne shit.
Yeah. What happened is one of them made a mistake and it got logged and they didn't think it did. And this is the bombshell here. This is how I don't understand how these people are not in prison. This is what blows my mind because this is obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence, tampering with witnesses. It's multiple felonies in a row, and the government just looks the other way. It's like I have zero faith in the justice system after this. So these guys go through. They interview the employees. And they decide what they want to write down. They only write down the stuff that's negative. And they don't write down what's positive or what the truth is. That's called exculpatory evidence. That exculpatory evidence is called Brady material, Brady. And it was the reason why that word is important is because there was a case where the government was found to be. They call it burying the Brady. The government hid Brady material, never turned it over to the defense. The guy got convicted, sent to prison, and then they found it through a Freedom of Information Act request that the government never even thought to check, and it got caught up, and it ended up these prosecutors Southern District got a black eye of epic proportions for burying the Brady, and essentially convicting an innocent person. Or preventing that person from having the ability to defend themselves.
Yeah, withholding information that would have aided in their defense.
Yeah, it's the most vile of all vile. So the company's doing this. because the government's saying, listen, you interview everyone first, and it's like they're on the back door, like communicating with each other, right? Like, we're not going to document it. It's only phone calls, no text messages, no emails. But hey, you guys go interview these people first, and
don't tell the NSA that they're not listening.
Yeah. They probably have it somewhere.
They 100% have it somewhere.
They have it somewhere.
Whether or not it's ever been listened to, I don't know, but it's on a hard drive somewhere.
Somewhere is.
Yeah, in a server farm.
And so the company goes through and decides that they're going to screen everything good, and then essentially go and give this fake, just like what they did to Trump. They did a fake dossier on me.
So what was their narrative? They decided to create this persona where you were just on your own, acting without their knowledge, out of control, and they were helpless to course correct anything from their chairman?
100%. That was what they told the government, and they created in this massive dossier. And this dossier is just completely false. Almost all of it. It's stuff like, if you were to, they take everything out of context. They don't put any of the context in. They just snip it here, put this right here, and then they just lie about it, and then they withhold evidence from the government. It was atrocious. I mean, it's criminal. And in my opinion, it's obstructive. If I did that, if I was when the government indicted me, if I did anything, even talk to a witness, I would have been indicted again. So how is it these guys can destroy evidence, tamper with witnesses, tell them to make up stories about me, tell them they need to create these narratives, and even the chief legal officer says, "Well, I know we have to create this narrative, but it's not really as easy as that." So they're like admitting that, like, they all know that this is a total fraud, that they're going to, that they're convicting an innocent person, and they don't care because they want to make sure that they're like, well, if we serve him up on a platter and essentially do whatever the government wants and lie about it, then they won't come after us, and we can take all of his stock and all of his money, because if he gets convicted, we can go sue him, which is what they did. So they went and they got me. They went and they created this huge fake dossier, and all the evidence is there that the dossier is fake. We have all the evidence. I mean, this stuff it's come out now. We have it through all kinds of different avenues, and it wasn't allowed. By the way, we never had this at trial. Most of all this stuff was never given to us at trial. So what happened is the company claimed privilege. So the government came in after they got this dossier. Then they indicted me. And then we requested all these communications, and the company says, nope, that's privilege between our attorneys. And our attorneys were CC'd on this, and none of this is coming out. And we go to the judge and we say, Your Honor, this is crazy. This stuff shows Mr. Milton's innocent. You got to let us have this information because it shows he's innocent. And the judge looks over the prosecutor. The prosecutor say, no, it's privileged. And the judge just, okay, I'll believe the prosecutors.
That seems like a very flawed system.
This is why I want the audience to know what it's like to go through a trial being indicted. Because it's not like, okay, let's just lay everything out on the table, good, bad, and different for the jury to see. And the jury, it's not. It's 90+% whatever the government wants, they get. And by then, it's almost guaranteed. Like, think about it. If you can control the first 90% of all the decisions where it goes, there is almost no chance ever that it can come out innocent. Even if you were Mother Teresa or anybody else, it wouldn't matter. And so this is what they did. They prevented us from having any of these documents under the guide of privileged documents. So now I didn't get any of these to show the jury. The government got to tell the story, got to bring everything in. They wanted all the hearsay, the bad experts that should have never been allowed in. And I'll give you a good example. There was a note from the CFO had wrote in his journal that Trevor's not, something along the lines of Trevor's not fraudulent. He's only misunderstood. After Hindenburg report hits, he's talking to one of the biggest investors. The investors all go, yeah, we know, we're never deceived. He's writing, all this stuff is being written down. This is an executive of the company, an officer of the company. The judge won't let it in. So here's the company writing down that, like, I'm not fraudulent. And you know what they did is and then what happened is the prosecutors went and they were able to approach him about it. And essentially, because we told the judge, Your Honor, this has got to come into the jury. How can you convict this guy or bring him to trial in front of a jury if the person on the stand is telling the jury that Trevor's fraudulent, yet in his diary or notes in the company that he's not fraudulent? Like, that's insane. He has to come. Nope, doesn't come in. Why? Well, it's because it was his opinion.
Yeah, but isn't he
now he's given a different opinion.
I was going to say he's up there testifying to his opinion. At the very least, it should show that the person that is talking to you is talking out of both sides of their mouth, and that you should take that into account as well.
No one here that's listening this is really important stuff. It's actually really fascinating. It's not fun to go through. but it may not mean a lot to you. The problem is when you get indicted, every little bit matters. Every little thing. Like all it takes is one document that the jury sees and says Trevor's not fraudulent. And they say, oh yeah, this is bullshit. This is not guilty. So that's how important it is. It's just all you're looking for is that one document to the bombshell, right? It's always the document someone destroyed or deleted because they knew it would help you. And you're working on little tiny movements in the trial. That's all. The whole trial is decided on this, not everything. It's this. It's that one document. It's that two documents. It's that one video. That's all it is. And so you may not understand how important that stuff is. Like, oh, does that really matter? Yeah, it matters more than anything you could imagine because we would have held that right up at closing and said, Trevor's not fraudulent, says the executive of the company the day after Hindenburg hits in his own diary. But the jury was not allowed to see it. So it's because the judge trusted the prosecution. So then it gets into even more crazy stuff because after all that stuff happens, we asked the judge to let the jury see the trucks, and the prosecution objects, whatever, and the judge says not coming in. So he doesn't allow me to show the trucks to the jury that was supposedly fake. The company wouldn't allow me to have any documents almost. I mean, it was only like very limited. It was what wouldn't help me. It was like my own emails. And so that didn't help me. I wanted to show the trucks to the jury. Couldn't do that either. So then what happens is it comes down to my point of like, okay, are you going to testify? Well, at this point, I can't testify about I'm testifying about an imaginary truck that actually exists that the jury can't see with their eyes because it's imaginary because I'm not allowed to show it to them. How do I do that? How do I tell the jury that this truck is real? It's flip it on at the other side. This is where I wish the prosecutors actually really cared about the truth. Imagine the prosecutor was like, well, this guy killed this guy and here's the gun, but you're not allowed to show the gun to the jury.
Or any of the evidence that supports it.
It's so, I could never live with myself. I would rather die because I believe that there is an afterlife. I don't know what it's like, but I believe there's an afterlife, and what you do in this life will reflect your afterlife. And I'll tell you what, I would rather be in the position I am right now with my life destroyed, my wealth destroyed, my family destroyed, my wife's health destroyed, than to be the man that did that to someone, because the hell they'll pay in the afterlife will be 1,000 times worse than the shit I had to pay here, because they'll have to fix it all. And they think they got their moments of gratification here. It's going to be utter hell on the other side, and it'll be a long, long time.
What did your attorney say to you when you were considering whether or not to testify? What was their guidance?
It was, we had to analyze the value of it, because
risk versus reward.
Yeah, risk versus reward, right? Because like I wanted to testify, but they said, but you look down and you say, well, the judge won't let you have the truck to show the jury, so you can't go over the truck. All you can do is testify to this imaginary thing the government's already told them is fake, which is not. You can testify about the documents that you're not allowed to see. You can testify about what you told employees that is not going to be allowed in because it's considered here. It's not going to be allowed in because you don't have a foundation to bring that in, because once again, you don't have the document. What are you going to testify about, Trevor? Well, that's a good question. I would want to testify about everything. You're not allowed to. And so now let's talk about what the government's going to come at you with. Because remember, the government's allowed to bring anything in.
Yeah, they're going to come out with the knives.
And so they come out with, once again, now you don't get to have anything to show you're good. You're not allowed to talk about your past, your history, who you are, where you grew up, what you did, what brought you to where you are, how the company was built, to give the whole view for the jury. The fact the jury cannot see the whole view is the greatest abomination, I think, ever in our justice system. The justice system needs to change so much. There's like, I'll tell you what, there's 3 or 4 things you could do to fix it, and the prosecutors would lose their mind. But there's 3 or 4 things you could do to stop all the innocent people going to prison. That is, number 1 is allowing the defendant to choose the venue. Let him choose. You want to bring an indictment? That's fine. Let the defendant choose where he gets tried. Now all of a sudden you got people of his peers choosing who's going to go to, if whether or not he's guilty or not. Someone who understands him. Imagine a black kid walk on the road, gets arrested or whatever, right? And when I was younger, I grew up in Vegas and I saw it a lot. That time racism was pretty prevalent. I know there still is some around there, but at this time it was like you walked while you're black, you're getting stopped. And it was it's interesting because if you were to try him in a neighborhood where he comes from, they would be laughed out of the courtroom, because it's like, those families have been through hell. They know what it's like. They're like, you can't, this person wasn't committing a crime, but I'll tell you what, the other guy down the road is, and we're happy to testify against him, but not this good person. That's why it's important to be, tried of your peers, not some person 3,000 miles away that doesn't even understand what milking a cow is. They just drink it out of a jug every day and that's it. So, number one is allow the defendant to choose the venue. That ought to be changed first and foremost. Number two is the defendant ought to be present in any grand jury conversations, and they ought to be recorded, and they ought to be able to be used in a motion to dismiss the case. Because what happens is the government goes in and they lie to the grand jury, or they mislead them, or they use other witnesses to mislead them to create a narrative. And then the grand jury just rubber stamps and they get indicted. It's like 99% of anytime you go into a grand jury is just automatically stamped. So it's not like a group of people that are actually there saying, hold on a second, government, we're here to make sure you don't overstep. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen. So that what needs to happen is the grand jury needs to be allowed to be given to, number one, ought to be recorded and used for motions to dismiss. So if the government misleads in the grand jury, it's basis to dismiss the entire indictment. Number two is the defendant ought to be able to go there and actually testify to the jury about why this should not be brought. And it should not be able to be used in trial. So whatever they testify to should not be used against them. That would stop probably half of the bad indictments in the country alone. Number three is defendants ought to be allowed to subpoena without anyone saying yes or no. The problem is we would go subpoena people. And you'll see in my case, we subpoenaed this guy. This count 4 was a real estate transaction where I bought a ranch, and we subpoenaed this guy, and we found out later he deleted tens of thousands of documents. He never turned them over to the government. He deleted them. Also, the recording he illegally took, he got immunity from by the United States government because he illegally recorded a conversation in a two-party consent state. He committed a crime. The government looked the other way, allowed it to come in, and half of it was deleted and or modified. And this was allowed in my trial. So this recording, that half of it's missing, was allowed in my trial without any of the context of the whole conversations. He snip-picked what he wanted, handed it to the government, and the government used it in my trial against me.
Can you imagine how I could release this podcast if I got to cut 50% of it and move things around in whatever way I wanted? And any podcast or any conversation with anybody, if I could take 50% of the material out and move shit around, which is not difficult to do. I'm a tech idiot and I could do that.
Yeah, here's the thing. And by the way, we never got the original file. So we don't even know if we don't know. All we know is he admitted on stand half of it was gone. So where's the other? First of all, why is this even allowed in the trial? Because it's incomplete, right? So they allow this fraudulently.
It buttressed the government's case.
There you go. And half of it's deleted or modified. It gets brought in. We find out later he deleted tens of thousands of documents. And then he tried to claim that and this is in the civil suit so you can read through it. It's public knowledge. He tried to claim that he dropped his phone in the sand. So he lost his communications. But somehow it was only my communications. It wasn't the communications between his son and his friends, and only if it had anything to do with me. Then we found communications where he was talking about how the options that supposedly I got indicted on were fool's gold, where there was no value to them. And I got indicted because he said that he was basing his investment decision on these options, when he actually has communications where he calls it fool's gold, but he deleted them, and he never gave them to the government, and he never gave them to us. We only found him because a federal judge in Utah forced a forensic examination of his devices, and a forensic company came in and analyzed his devices and found him. How is this guy not in prison? They look the other way. This is why I'm so mad. Justice is like, it's no longer like America. We're screwed, dude. Like, if you can't hold the standard to everybody, don't bring it. Like, you can't just say, well, we're going to do whatever and ruin this guy's life, but we're going to allow everyone else around him to commit crimes as long as he's convicted. How is this America anymore, dude? This is what North Korea does.
How did you feel when the case wrapped up and the jury went to deliberation? How were you feeling in that moment?
I thought, well, here's the problem. I had a lot of issues with this because I haven't gotten to this yet in the podcast. We're about to. The biggest problem that happened is the judge gave the jury the wrong instructions. So the judge, and I'm not an expert, so please understand that like what I say here today on this is not going to be perfect because I'm not an appellate attorney, nor an attorney, nor a Southern District attorney. So I'm only going to give some ideas of what I think it says. Mm-hmm. Don't hold me exactly to it because you have to go and get the actual law yourself if you want to talk about it. But here's what it is. The judge instructed the jury that they could convict me without any intent. It's an insider, I believe it's an insider trading instruction, not a wire fraud or security fraud instruction. So the difference between someone committing a crime and a mistake, someone committing a mistake is just intent. That's what it is. Did you intentionally do it? Or did you didn't even know you didn't even know and it was just a bad chance, bad spot, bad time, whatever, bad wording.
Manslaughter and murder is a good example.
There you go. There's a difference between manslaughter and murder. Manslaughter is like, you accidentally killed someone you didn't mean to.
With a car accident.
You ran a red light, you didn't even know you're running it, and you look down to get your drink, you killed someone. That's manslaughter. It's not murder. Yeah, someone did lose their life. I get it. In this situation, the judge instructed the jury against our objections. We told the judge he was wrong. We said, you're instructing the jury that they can convict me without any intent, which is insane. The judge asked the prosecutors what they thought, and the prosecutors knew that he had made a mistake, and they took advantage of it. And they said, no, it's all right. And the reason why we know they took advantage of it is because they used that in their summation in front of the jury in the closing arguments. And so they used it to their advantage. And that's a premeditated, that's a thought process. They knew he effed up, and they're like, oh, we got Trevor. Now he's getting convicted 100%.
I wonder how often it is a judge would ask a prosecution team what they thought of an objection. That seems backwards.
Well, it's not really backwards because the judge will allow both sides to tell their side of why.
Oh, gotcha.
So he'd say like, so
he
why,
was asking for their
tell
thoughts
me why,
on your objection.
Yeah, tell me why
Gotcha.
Mr. Milton's objection is wrong.
Okay.
And so I think it's actually like probably one of those things that's probably smart for judges to do.
Okay.
It's not an.
I thought you meant he was looked over and like, I'm not really understanding this. What do you guys think? Cool, we'll go with that.
No, but everything they said he would just go with. So that was the problem. Is like he would let them say their side, and they're like, "No, Your Honor, this is the case law." And we're like,
and he would side with
we're
them.
like, "No, that case law was from a lower district court judge that was never affirmed in a case law, standards, and then appellate courts have already ruled against that numerous times. So like." The precedent now is it's obliterated. That was 20 years ago or 10 years ago. That has nothing to do with the current standard. And the judge allowed it in. And we told him he was wrong. And we told him he's wrong again and then wrong again. We told him 3 times, Your Honor, you're wrong. This is so important. Because it doesn't matter. I mean, imagine if you it doesn't matter if you're innocent of a crime. If the judge gives the wrong instructions to the jury, you're guilty. You're automatically can be found guilty of a crime you did not commit.
Yeah, if they set the bar where it shouldn't be,
there you go.
You're going to have a hard time not tripping over it.
And my bar, the problem was it was so low. It actually said there was no intent required.
So you could be convicted off of a mistake.
And the government, this is the crazy part, the prosecutors in their closing argument said, all you need to do is find that he lied. Well, I'm sorry, but lie, like even though I didn't lie, but a lie is not fraud. A lie is not fraud. It's not, you can't convict someone on a lie. It's got to be something where you're intentionally deceiving the public, intentionally to take someone's property or to manipulate a stock. It's not a lie is you don't go to prison for a lie. And they instructed the jury essentially that all they needed to do is find that I lied, and that's enough to convict. That was their wording along that line.
Yeah.
And so going into this, I'm like, shit, we're screwed.
That's how you felt when they went
I was worried because I didn't think the jury ever would, because I think that they didn't even meet that bar. I thought the case was so bad that there was no way the jury would even find me guilty. But I knew the judge gave the wrong instructions, and our team was freaking out about it because we're like, we objected. I think it was 3 times we told the judge, you cannot do this. Go research it. Just go look. And the judge believed the prosecutors, and he gave the wrong instructions that did not require intent on. So there's 4 counts. Essentially 2 security frauds, 2 wire frauds, right? And they're tied to each other. So it's like really just, So count 1, the judge said no intent was required. Count 2, the judge says intent was required. Count 3 and 4, no intent's required because he was under a different standard. And we're like, that's wrong. All 4 require intent, Your Honor. And we gave him the case law. And so the jury came back and they said, well, there was no intent. So you're not guilty on count 2, but you're guilty on the 3 counts that don't require intent. Our greatest fear and nightmare came to life in that moment.
I feel like, though, the objections that you or your legal team presented will play very well in your favor in an appeal process.
It should, because but this is the problem. You don't know what judges you draw. There's a lot of judges on the appellate court in the Southern District. Some of them will rubber stamp anything the government says to protect the government's conviction rate of 96% or whatever. They don't care if you're innocent or not. They just will rubber stamp. Not all of them, some of them. Some of them are very they are willing to stand up to the government and say, I don't care if you're government. I don't care. My job as the appellate attorney is to make sure this system doesn't become chaos. So I don't give a crap. I'm fixing this problem. And those are the ones that have courage. Those are the ones that actually are doing their job right. And then there's ones down the middle that kind of sometimes just don't really, they'll just kind of go either way. Yeah. It all comes down to, I'll give you a good example. There was a case called Simonelli, which is identical to very similar to my case, USA versus Simonelli. My same appellate attorney who's on my case was representing Simonelli. Simonelli went up to the Supreme Court because, so what happened is she went before, this appellate attorney's name's Alexandra Shapiro. She is phenomenal. One of the best appellate attorneys that's ever lived, I think, in the country. She's fantastic and brilliant on every measure. She's everything educated that you and I are not.
Almost everybody is.
And she is just, and not only that, she's nice. She's just an amazingly awesome, beautiful, intelligent, everything woman that's just, I love everything about her. She's just wonderful. I wish I would have met her 20 years ago in my life because she's made that big of an impact on my life. And it's because she loves her work. And she came from the Southern District. She was a prosecutor. And she came from the Southern District. And the thing she hates the most out of everything is injustice. She does not, she's like, look, if you're guilty, you're guilty. Go do your time. If you're not, I will fight to the last, this should not happen. And that's what I love about her. She's not, she doesn't have an agenda.
Supposed to be.
That's what it's supposed to be. And it's not, because these attorneys go to law firms and they make $10 million after they convict people. So it's or $5 million or whatever. They get how much money they make is based upon who they took down. So they're profiting off of destroying someone's life, even if the person's innocent. And Alexander's not that way. She hates it. She hates the fact if there's something wrong, whether that person's the worst person in the world, or the best person in the world, she doesn't care. She'll look straight at you and say, I don't care. I only care whether or not they made a mistake. And I love that about her. I truly just, I love that. And I wish everyone in there was like that, because 90% of the injustice would go away overnight if everybody was like that. But they're not. It's all about well, do we really want this person to go free or not? And so it really comes down to the appeal. And so she did the Simonelli case where she brought it up to the appellate court. And it actually has to do with my case too. One of my counts, and the appellate court denied her. I think it was all three, or two or three denied her, and the guy went to prison. Went up before the Supreme Court, 9-0. The Supreme Court was livid. What the hell are you guys doing over there?
That it even probably made it to their level.
9-0, that it made it to their level. What are you guys doing over there? Why would you ever think that? And it was about money or property. It was essentially, they said that you can be convicted of wire fraud even though if you didn't take money from someone. So it's well, okay, we can indict anybody. Intentions are now, or if you went to a party, that's indictable now. Or whatever, you got a car ride from someone, that's indictable. It's just anything can be considered property in the government's eyes because they want to indict everybody. But the Supreme Court lost their mind, 9-0 against the Second District Appellate Court, saying you guys are. And remember, I think it was Kagan came from the Southern District. So she's from the Southern District. She even voted 9-0, which is unheard of in the Supreme Court ruling, of how egregious this was. And so that you can see now the appellate courts have almost become, not all of them, but a lot of them have become just secondary stamps for the prosecution. And the Supreme Court had to step in on something. 9-0 says that you three down there should have never even allowed this to come to me. I get if it was 5-4, okay, it's
a discussion at least.
That's a big discussion of how do we split the law? This was an absolute egregious violation of someone's rights, and an innocent person went to prison. And so this is what people don't know. I think a lot of the country's woken up, whether you're Republican or Democrat, mainly just because of Trump. They're seeing now that they're starting to actually get involved in trials now. You see a lot more of these investigative reporters that are now covering trials, and it's kind of become like all the new podcasts and like Netflix shows, a lot of them around trials now.
Yeah.
And it's because there's so much misconduct rampant in the system that it's so sexy that you can uncover all this misconduct, and you're like, how in the hell did this happen? And it's I think that's why it's become so popular.
What happens in your life when you're found guilty out of 3 of 4 of those counts? I mean, do they want to take you into custody in that moment? I mean, like, what is after that is read? What's next?
Normally they do. Luckily, I had, as I said, I think my judge has an incredible heart. I just don't think he's able to see the goodness in a lot of people because he sees so many bad people come through his system. So he's naturally just like, it's just one more, just one more, just one more. That's another bad person. And there are a lot of bad people that go through the system. So I get it. And you just become, it's almost like you become immune to hearing people anymore after you've heard it so many times.
A lot of my law enforcement friends express it in that same way. They're so, it's not that they're callous. They're so used to hearing the same thing over and over again when what they can tangibly see. It's like, well, and also they're dealing with literally the same person for the 4th time in the day.
Yeah.
I can understand that. And I think if they're not careful, it robs them of their sense of humanity.
It does. And I think, the judge showed it in my sentencing. He realized for the first time, holy cow, I think we might have got it wrong.
Which it sounds like he left the door open.
I think he did, and I think he realized that there was really big mistakes. So if one of the things is the judge didn't even know the trucks were real. So in sentencing, he was caught off guard. He's like, wait, are you telling me the trucks are real? Like they're driving today? Yes, Your Honor. You're telling me that they're being delivered to customers? Yes. Both of them? Yes, Your Honor. He looks over the prosecution and he says, hold on a second. Are you telling me that these trucks are actually in production today, available for sale to customers? And you know what the prosecution's response was?
No.
Well, Your Honor, they have seatbelt recalls.
Yeah, I have a Ford that's had like 6 recalls. Tailgate, brake bearing.
Dude,
like
that was their response. Rather than just telling the truth and just saying, you know what, Your Honor, that yes, they are real. They are driving, or whatever. Rather than just admitting when you're wrong, they actually tried to tell the judge that like somehow these trucks weren't quality production vehicles because they had seatbelt recalls.
Show me a single vehicle that's ever been produced without a recall.
So that, by the way, that's in my sentencing report. You can read the person's down there dictating with the typing and everything. That's their words, not mine.
I like it better when they wear the mask. They're like a fighter pilot in the courtroom, just.
I hated wearing the mask, dude. It was so awful. I looked so weird with a mask on, man.
Oh, no. I mean, have you ever seen where they're dictating into it?
Oh, that one.
They have like a fighter pilot.
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
no.
they're like and maybe it's only in movies. I'm an idiot in case I'm wrong on this. But they're in there, they're like repeating what people are saying, just like.
No, I don't think I've seen that yet. So they actually told the judge that the trucks were not like a quality production truck because they had seatbelt recalls. And the judge is like, what? And so the judge takes a break. I think he went back to research just to see if we were telling the truth. He comes back in. I think that I could be wrong. I don't know. And one day I'd love to actually meet the judge in person in a way that was like legally able to, where I could talk to him.
Are you allowed to do that?
I don't know, but one day I'd love to because I actually think he has a really good heart. I just think that there's like I think that he's probably never really seen someone come through that's been innocent and totally framed. And I brought up the fact in my sentencing, most defendants only give like a 10-second speech to the judge. I gave a 40-minute speech to the judge. I mean, I was crying through half of it. I talked about my mom. My mom died. I talked about my raising up. I talked about how I said, it's easy to point fingers and tell someone how they should go to prison for something. I lived in the favelas while these guys over here, the prosecutors, were going to Yale and Harvard. I was down serving people and eating dirt, living on dirt floors, while these guys were going to parties and polo clubs. And I went through my whole life about how I've given everything I have to most everyone around me. I gave, actually, it was over almost 70% of my company I gave. At one time, it was worth $34 billion. There's probably 50 plus people that were millionaires out of the company that I gave stock to. Some of them made, at the time, I'm talking about at the time when we went public, some of them were worth billions. And so I gave almost everything I had away. Why would I give that away if I was trying to defraud? If I was going to go make some misstatement to try to somehow pump the stock 30 cents. Why in the world would I ever do that? That's the most absurd thing in the world. Because it makes no sense. I'm giving everything away. I've never wanted it. I wanted everyone else to do. I told every employee, that most of them that I hired, I said, I want you in a position where you never need me again. And some of those people turned around and stabbed me in the back. Some of them I gave most of everything I had to, huge chunks. They were scared of losing what I gave them, so they decided to turn on me and essentially just they didn't necessarily lie to the government, but they just stood back and said, I'm not going to say anything because I want to keep what I got and I don't want to be targeted.
Money does weird things to people. I've seen it drastically. Money and fame, sometimes independently, sometimes combined. I've seen it really change some people that I've known for a long time, to the point where it's like, okay, like we can still be cordial, but maybe go fuck yourself. You know? That's a good segue, though. Explain to me the other two. So one is obviously a countersuit, and this one's demanding a jury trial, essentially, correct?
Yeah, so we've gone over the appeal. And by the way, I'll just quickly touch on that, and then I'll go into these because we can just finish up on the appeal. So my appeal will be heard in about 6 months.
I didn't realize how fresh the ink was on this, actually, when you sent
just
these
barely within days. This is why I decided finally, it's like, okay, look, now it's all out there. I can finally talk.
Yeah.
And I needed to wait until the company did everything they wanted to do for years so they could never blame anything on me. They've been running the company for 4 years now, and they essentially have taken the stock from $34 down to 30 cents. And the other day before the reverse split stuff. And,
why did it go up in value with the reverse split?
No, it's because what they do is they say, if you have 30 shares, you're going to give us your 30 shares back, and we're only going to give you one in return, but it's worth 30 times more. So it's not – a reverse split is actually taking from people their value and then going and slamming the market with new shares as soon as the reverse split goes through. So what they're doing is they're just it's a legal way of stealing from shareholders.
Damn.
I hate it. It's actually one of the worst things. It's one of the most criminal things in the public markets I think there is.
It sounds like it's traditionally probably a bad sign for a business.
It was only designed – it's an escape route that they've created, but it was only designed for companies that were like, say like NVIDIA or Tesla or whatever, when you're up at like $2,000 a share. And the law was originally created to allow small investors that only have $20 to invest or whatever. You can't buy fractions of a share. So what they did is they allowed them to reverse split to get it down to a manageable amount where smaller investors can partake in the market. But what's happened is because of that law, companies are going bankrupt, or companies that are losing all their value. They abuse that law to essentially say, okay, we have to stay above $1 threshold or we get kicked off the public markets. So we're now down at 30 cents. We're going to get kicked off any day now. So there's this law over here that was made specifically to allow investors to invest in valuable companies that are too expensive. And we're going to reverse split, and we're going to take all the shares from all the shareholders, every one of them, and we're going to give you back one for every 30 you had. But it's going to become worth 30 times more.
Which keeps it above that threshold.
Keeps it above the threshold. But here's the problem. Then the company issues an enormous amount of shares at the same time, and then they go and they dump all those on the market at a higher rate, at that higher rate. So it went from 30 cents up to $10, and then the company goes and or some companies go and they dump all these shares on the market, and then they all they did is just steal from people to drive the price up fake to dilute them out again. And it's, in my opinion, it's one of those things that should be outlawed.
Can you do it more than once?
Yeah,
it's like if they got to that situation again, they could do it again.
I think they can do it twice. I think they can.
Oof.
And at some point, the NASDAQ eventually, once they get down below a certain value, it's like, I don't know what it is, but it's probably down below 100 million or something. They usually just kick them off. But it's dangerous because it allows them to steal from the shareholders, and in my opinion, and I don't like it. It's I voted against it. So a lot of shareholders, had reached out, like asking me to please help, and I'm like, listen, I can't get involved in anything, but I am voting against it. I am 100% voting against this. So the appeal gets back to the appeal. The appeal gets heard in about 6 months.
I think it's this one. That's the initial.
Is that the initial?
Yeah, that was the light read.
No, this is the appeal.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, that's the appeal. That's the appeal. Yep. But it's an easy read because Alexander's really good at really good. If anyone wants to go read the appeal, it's on the the site I said, and on trevormilton.com, and you can just, and her appeal is amazing. As I said, there's nothing on the site except for 3 documents. That's it. It's just it's literally just a database for people to grab documents. Then there's the lawsuit against the company and the lawsuit against the chief legal officer. But I think we're done with the
Cool.
point was I just want to say it gets heard by the end of this year. So I'll find out. I mean, you asked me what happens, afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Normally they throw you in prison right away, and then you deal with your appeal while you're in prison. The judge realized that there was major mistakes. And to his credit, he actually was very open about it in his sentencing. And I think the judge was actually going to sentence me for a longer amount because the government originally came in. I think they asked for like 60 years or something. They want to put me away for life for making a comment that they didn't like. This is how you can murder someone in New York and you'll get out on bail. But you tweet something that they don't like, you're going to prison for life. Then the probation office or whatever it is that there's like this office that gives an opinion. I think they came in and they said, well, 12 years is more reasonable, not 60. And it's based upon this numbering system, And what the government did is the government said, well, I hurt all these shareholders, but they couldn't find any. So in trial, they were only able to bring 3 shareholders in, and none of them admitted they invested at the moment on what I said. So it was like they couldn't find a single person that actually invested based upon what I said. Only like what people. Some investors say, "Oh yeah, I did," but when did you invest? Well, I invested 400 times over the last 3 days. And so you're telling me one of the 400 was, like high frequency trader? You're like, that's nothing to do with what Trevor said.
I'm not a sophisticated investor by any stretch, but I go into any investment knowing that it's a risk. That it may go up and it may go down. And that's on me. And whatever decision, like the information that I make the decision on, if people are doing criminal things, that's one thing. But the vast majority of that accountability and responsibility is on my shoulders.
Well, and here's the other thing. I could understand if money was being stolen or embezzled or whatever, right?
As I say, like you're doing criminal shit, you should be held accountable for criminal shit.
But this is the government saying every document you ever submitted was correct. Your disclosures were all correct. Your timelines were all correct. Everything was correct, but retail investors are too stupid to read them. And so they indicted me they bifurcated it. They said the requirements of the SEC no longer apply to retail investors because they're too stupid to read it. And we're like, where's that law? You're bringing this into trial, telling the jury that retail investors are too stupid to read the SEC?
Maybe retail investing should be outlawed then.
There you go. And how is it that I get indicted for something that has never been created as a law? So they created this new standard that somehow retail investors are no longer applicable to the documents that the government requires you to file for the retail investors. And so I got indicted for that. That's exactly what, because if you were to go off of what our documents say, there is no crime ever committed. They essentially say, well, retail investors misunderstood you, so we're indicting you. And I'm like, and that was actually their verbiage, is they said that the retail investors don't read SEC documents. And they told that to the jury. And I'm like, I was so mad. I wanted to stand up and be like, I just wanted to scream. I've never been so mad in my life because I'm like, that's a blatant lie. You know what you're saying is a lie, and you're telling the jury that just because you want a conviction, you don't care if that person's in, is because you want to cheat, essentially, to convict someone. Because how else can you tell a jury that retail investors don't read? I can tell you what, almost all retail investors do read SEC documents. Maybe not entirely in depth, but this is what they do. They go get it from the Motley, They get it from Bloomberg. So they read this stuff, and there's all these groups in the middle that are there specifically to help relate this information to retail investors. They discounted all that, and they essentially just said, well, retail investors don't read anything. So therefore, nothing else that's said in the market that's ever given to them, we're going to let the jury know about. We just want the jury to know that retail investors don't read these documents that are accurate that Trevor put out. So everything that's accurate, that's required by law to submit to the government, that was approved by the Security Exchange Commission, submitted to them, was accurate. But doesn't matter. And I'm just like, how do you combat a crime that doesn't exist, like that is created in the moment, in the trial, in a new classification? So what do they do now? Do they require new disclosures? My point is they can't just get away with this. The appellate court's got to do something, because they can't just say, well, it's okay that you bifurcated the retail investors away from SEC documents. Okay, well, if that's true, Congress needs to step in, and they need to create new regulations for retail investors. And you can't indict people on that until what Congress does. And so that's the point that I got so mad about, because I'm like, this is a moving target. There's no way to win this thing. Like, it's just whatever they say goes.
Yeah.
And that's what, that's kind of that's what they did. And so the risk that I have now is normally defendants do go to prison right away. And so the judge sentenced me to 4 years of prison. The government was asking for originally, like I said, like 60, then down to 12. And the judge gave me 4 years. He says, I'll let you serve all your time, at the same time. So it's 4 years per count, but you're going to serve it at the same time. And so essentially that's what it is. I was very lucky to have the judge was allowed me to stay out and help my wife and manage my appeal out of prison. Mm-hmm. And normally the government comes in and just takes all your assets and just takes everything you have. The judge held him at bay, and it was actually really, I thought it was a really brave moment for the judge. Like, it was a moment where I think he had a lot of courage. The government was asking for everything, and the judge had said some things in my sentencing that was just really, really kind of cool, like kind of powerful. He just says, look, I don't think you intended to harm anyone, Trevor. And so did the prosecutors even admitted that in sentencing. They're like, well, we don't think he intended to harm anyone, but he sure did deceive and da-da. The point is that they, if you were to go by the law, what they said shows that I was innocent, that I didn't, and I don't need a pity trip for anyone, because that's not what this is about. I'm an advocate of, like, what I'd love to see is a complete criminal reform. This is where I'd love to see, like, Congress get into, some of the Congress, and I would love to see them come in and actually reform the criminal system completely, and give the ability for it to be a fair system. And evil people and criminals and guilty people should go to prison or rehabilitation if there's a way to do it. Innocent people should never, ever be dragged through this ever, because they spend their lives trying. I mean, they spend their lives trying to do the right thing, and you can ruin their name in 2 seconds, because the government has so much power just by indicting someone. My bank, like, immediately, my banks canceled me. It was instant.
Really?
Oh yeah, instant. They called me up. JP Morgan called me up and said, we want your money out of our account tomorrow. And I'm like,
we don't care where it goes,
hold
but
a
it's got to
second.
go somewhere.
What? And they're like, yeah, we're doing you're gone. You're out of here. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Like, at that time I had a lot of money, and I was like, I can't just move it. And I got to go open up new bank accounts. I hadn't built out other banking relationships. And so, and they're like, no, it's out of here. We had a loan on an aircraft at the time. They're like, they were asking for all kinds of things, and they were like, yeah, you just don't want your money here. And I'm like,
wow.
And that was only one thing. It was everything. It was everywhere I went. Like, I can't apply for a credit card now.
Really?
Yeah. I'll get denied. There's some system that is a blacklist system the government's created, and I don't know what it is.
What if this goes your way on the appeal, though? Will that reverse itself, or will it take forever for those? I
think you have to spend your rest of your life still fighting those systems to
just
get them
in purgatory.
Yeah, to get the I think they have these databases, and these databases don't update as rapidly for the other way as they do for if you're found guilty or they don't like you or they cancel you. There's some database in there. I don't know what government agency it is, but they attach it to your name, and instantly you're blacklisted through the billions of different tentacles all the way down into the supply chain of the like. It's just crazy. Like, you can't do anything now. Like, it's once they do that, once they flag you, you're done. And even if you
cripple you.
They cripple you
Personally and professionally, yeah.
Well, and I have to look. I'm like, how do I hold my money? What do I do with it? What do you
do with it?
It's a problem.
You need a big mattress.
A big mattress.
Like probably Cali King.
There are some California King. Gives you an extra 2 feet.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's cool. There are some banks that do work with people that kind of just don't care what the government says.
Okay.
And they do care, but they essentially say it's a right for someone to have a bank account. So, what are you going to do? And they're smaller banks, and they just, I think that they become squeezed so hard because a lot of people that get indicted have to go over them. And I think, so the problem is, it's just this, people don't realize the repercussions of what happens. All your relationships, whether it's in business, go away too instantly. Like, I had thousands of people I used to talk to that were really close to me. Mm-hmm. And it was immediate, like, where all of a sudden they were like, oh, I can't talk to you. I'm sorry. And I'm like, huh? For what? Like, I've been dealing with you for 5 years. You're not, what do you mean?
Be thankful for that.
I actually am now.
They saved you time.
I realize they were leeches.
Yeah, your friends are the ones that'll stand with you in the rain, even when there's like an overhang or an umbrella available. The people that want to hang out there with you in the sunshine when everything's going your way and you're paying the tab for everything, you can be really pissed at them, or you can be thankful that they just saved you so much time for the remainder of your life.
That's wise words beyond measure. That's only learned through pain. Oh, yeah.
There's only one reason I know that. It is what it is.
I got a very good friend of mine who came, who's been flying with me a lot, had told me something very similar, essentially saying that, look, you don't realize that the tentacles and leeches you have on you until the shitstorm. And, it's very similar to what you said, but in different words, just be glad you now know. And I'm like,
it hurts when they rip off.
Dude, it hurts.
But the organism is actually healthier afterwards.
It hurts. I've had friends that I've been friends with for a long time that they spent years trying to destroy me afterwards, just because the media had called them or targeted them because they were associated with me. And so they just decided, well, it's easier just to hate them too. And it's amazing to see that your real friends after you go through hell are like God's gift on this earth. Because you're like, you know what? I know you would stand there and you would die, like you would literally just stand there and you would take a bullet and you would just say, I'm not moving, dude. I don't care.
And the older I've got, how old are you?
I'm 42 now, I think. 43.
Right. I mean, these are things you should know. Look into it a little bit. Do some math. I'm 46 now, turned 47 this year. My social circle is actually decreasing in size, not increasing, for the same things that we're talking about.
It's a good feeling though, huh?
It is a comforting feeling knowing that what you do have, regardless of how big or small, is real.
Yeah.
I'd rather take almost nothing but have it real than have what I think is everything and have it be fake.
Dude, I hope you're like, it's so cool you have an audience that can hear that, because the people that actually really digest a podcast that love it, those are the things when you're in this shit storm of your life, the things that are really hard, and whether it's a divorce or it's financial failure or it's sickness, those are the words that get you through that shit, dude. Like I've had some days where I'm like, I can't go on anymore. Like there's nothing left in me. There's nothing left of Trevor.
Same here.
And you have to, you go back to certain people that have said certain things that have actually proven it to you in your life that they're worthy of giving you those words in the time of pain. Because 90% of the words that are ever told to me are told to me because no one's ever experienced it. They just read it. The people that have gone through hell, and I love when my friends have gone through hell. And I thrive when I find the worst about my friends that they've been through, because it makes me love them and it makes me like connect with them. And I'm like, I love you, dude. Like you're going through hell, man. I just want to come hug you, dude. Like I just want to be there for you. Like I don't fucking care what time it is, 3 a.m. You call me, like I know because I've been there so many times. Just call me, dude. That's it. And it's like those good hearts, man. It's just like I got the chills right now just talking about it, because it's like I've come to appreciate more than anything in life. I don't care. It's not the planes, it's not the jets, not the cars, it's not the travel, it's not that. It's the heart of someone that is so beautiful that I'm just like, I love you, dude, for being such a good person.
Yeah, it's hard to find.
And I, before I went through this, dude, I would have never. I never knew that. The pain it was taking me to learn that is like I never wish this upon anyone ever. But that was my lesson I learned, and it's been painful but beautiful.
What would you change if you had a time machine? So you could go back to not the idea, talking with your father, but from that day you decided to found Nikola until this stuff hit your plate. What would you change?
There's, it's a little bit of a, maybe not I guess it's not selfish, but it kind of is. But I wish I wish I could have been there that day that, I wish I could have stopped the day that my wife got the doctor put the wrong blood in her, because it set off a chain of events that allowed me not to be able to defend myself. Mm. And it allowed her to get sick in a way that it caused me, pain and suffering through that whole time, where I knew I couldn't do anything to help her other than just be there for her. And that's all she ever wanted. That's all she wants, just me to be there for her. It's not about anything else. And I'm just like, man, I can't do anything to help you. And that's that feeling of like helplessness, knowing you can't help someone you love. Like it sucks. And so that whole thing, and it's not her fault. I'll make that very clear here, so no one ever claims that. It's zero her fault. It's 100% She's the light of my life. She's amazing. She stuck with me through all this shit. Telling me, I mean, the hell that she's been through and the hell that I've been through and her targeted and the amount of nasty people that have told her she should die and go to hell. And I mean, just the stuff she gets on hate online just because of what the media says about me. And it's like she stuck through everything with me and through her sickness. And she's as close to as a perfect woman as you could ever dream of in this life. And she's brilliant. And it's like, if I could have given her a healthy life, that's what I would have changed, because I don't care what I've been through. I want her to have a healthy life, and she can't have kids now. And that's the dream she's had. And so it's like, it's just been so hard to see this, like, this happen. And at the same time, if that hadn't have happened, then I would have been able to have the strength that, the time and everything else, and not feel guilt for not being there more for her. And so I would have been able to stay and just say, screw it. Who cares about the storm? Let's just battle through it. So
you can borrow one of my kids, and you guys will never want to have kids again. Michael knows them all. He's just like, yep. I'm thinking like a long 3-day weekend. You'd be like, hey, where's the return label?
I would say that. She wouldn't. She's crazy. She's crazy like that, man.
I know.
She just thrives for children. It's like,
it's instinctual.
It is. And there's like this person that we met that had dementia, this really nice old lady. She was really old and she was about ready to die. She had dementia. My wife would just go over and knit with her. And I'm just like, why? Like, we don't even know this person. And she just like, she didn't care. She loved this. It was like her love for people. And like, I'm like, what is it? I mean, like, I love to help people, but it's like short, quick help. Like, what can I do really quick to help you? Right. Yeah. She'll just, oh yeah, I'm just going to go over and talk to, go over and just be there because she has no one. And I'm like, that's more godlike than I am. Cause I'm like, can I buy her like a, is there anything I can do to help her, like enjoy life more, but my wife, Chelsea, she's like, no, she just wants to knit.
See, I don't know what it says.
Croquet. That's it. Crochet.
Croquet is the weird mallet.
Oh, sorry.
thing.
Yeah, that's right. Crochet. See, I'm sorry, man. That's going to go on. I'm going to get killed for that.
Croquet, I think, is a Hamptons type thing.
Oh my gosh. You can tell I didn't come from money, dude. You can tell. Oh my gosh. Dude.
Oh man. The dementia thing, again, I don't know what it says about me, but I spend too much time thinking about things like this. Like, would it be cool to hang out with somebody with dementia because every day you could tell a different story and they would never know?
Never know.
Also, is there an aspect of having dementia, and this is going to sound horrible, and this is a thought exercise, that would be kind of awesome because every day is truly a new day?
I will tell you that answer, though. I'll tell you that answer because I've had I have one of the shortest memories you'll ever encounter in your life. Like it's one reason why I'm really bad with words sometimes too, is, I feel like my memory, the way I don't remember things very well. I only remember them through pain or through an experience, and I have to attach everything through an experience for me to remember something. And my dad, I remember me coming to my dad when I was in young school because I was telling him how bad of a problem I had, and I struggled really, really bad. That's why I hated school, because I couldn't memorize anything. And I was like, Dad, what's wrong with me? And like, I hate this, And he says, be grateful that you're not your mom, where you have to remember the pain the next day. And I was like, holy, and this is when I was 12 years old when he told me this, 12.
Jesus, he's just dropping knowledge ton of bricks on your head.
And he says, it is a gift from God not to remember the pain. And I'm like, you are. And that's what I'm honestly grateful for, is I've been through more pain than, there are people been through more than me. And I'll never, ever discount what they've been through, because I know the hell everyone is just as bad. But I've been through some shit, man. And really painful stuff. Having your name destroyed, your company destroyed, your freedom taken away, your indictment, people framing you, lying about you, destroying you purposely, then suing you, then taking it all from you, and the courts let it happen. The injustice is so deep that you're like, how is this even possible? And you have to live with it every day you wake up, knowing someone gets what you have because they can destroy you and they're rewarded for the destruction. I have to wake up every day and know that. And these are people I loved. These are people I used to be around every day, all day long, every single day for years and years.
Just remember that doesn't say anything about you, and it says everything about them. It's easy to get lost in that negative circle.
I'm going to frame that, because I've never had anyone ever tell me that in my life. I've never heard that statement. I've never, ever heard that statement in my life.
It's probably not. I've never had a unique original thought in my life, so I'm definitely repeating something I heard somebody else say.
It's deep though. That's something I've never thought, because I've had a hard time sometimes not having the feeling of feeling very like, this is, you internalize it and you think, how can I handle this anymore? How do I the injustice is so bad, but you realize, like what you just said helps me turn it. And I've tried really hard, like a mental game for, this 4 years has been all mental. Like, how do I turn this bad day into a day that I can smile again? You know? And so that's a good, I have a lot of happiness to me, and, there's a lot of goodness now, and 4 years has gone by, and I'm still fighting it, and the worst could come or the best could come for me. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. It sounds almost like you're at a precipice.
It is. And it depends on how we get the word out on the whole appeal. Cause the more, like, you look at Julian Assange as well, right? He just got released yesterday from prison. And it wasn't because, it was just like, it was time. It was because the pressure finally built enough that they were like, yeah, this is wrong. Let's fix it. If we can build enough pressure on this, one of the things would be great is that there'd be enough pressure coming through lawmakers, towards the appellate courts, to do the right thing, to actually say, okay, this is wrong. We need to fix this, and we need to make sure no one goes through this again. And then it would allow me to obviously spend my life trying to do this, that'd be my goal in my life, would actually be to do criminal reform. That's my dream now. All the money I ever make in my life will go towards not only helping other people, it'll go towards criminal reform. And that's what I want. I've actually I've donated quite a bit to different people and funds and innocent projects and stuff. And I really want to see this reform happen. And that's actually that's awesome. So that the word getting out is really what's going to help, because if people don't do anything, if they just hear something, they don't actually do anything, what good is the story? Like, you really need to. Julian Assange got released because of the pressure. It built enough. Yeah.
People tell themselves, it'll never happen to me. And that's a lie that we tell ourselves. You never know what's coming. And if you see an injustice, we don't all have the same degree of influence or impact. Yeah. But if you don't do something about it, and then it comes back to bite you later on.
Dude, even words of encouragement, where you like, if you don't have to be an influence. You don't have to be anything to make a big difference. You can spread the word to your friends. You can tell everyone about the podcast. They can go listen to it. You can talk about the injustice of like this case and other cases online. You can write your congressman. There's things you can do that don't actually require you to have any confrontation from other people. Like, cause some people are like, I don't want the spotlight on me, because we've seen what happens in America with the spotlight on you. Normally you get destroyed. So they come after you. And so a lot of people, I think, now are like, I see this injustice, but I don't want the spotlight on me. So there's things you can do. You can spread the word. You can post about it. You can blog about it. You can send the podcast to other people. You can talk to everybody in your circles about it. You can write your congressman. Because I'll tell you what, as soon as Congress starts to see that this is a problem, and believe me, they're seeing it now. A lot of them now are seeing what's happened with with some of the politicians.
Yeah,
and there's going to be reform coming, because if next, who is it? Who's the next person? It's going to be everyone they don't like is going to be indicted soon. And I used to live in Brazil. This was normal.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's new to America, and it's got to stop. This stuff has got to stop.
What else do you want to leave people with? I think I did an awesome job of kind of breaking it down sequentially in the time that it occurred. I should say, not in like a allotted time, but what do you want to leave people with?
I think the one is the real story. The story is I didn't defraud anyone. The real story's never been told. And I think this will end up becoming a really amazing series one day on Netflix or Hulu or whatever. And I think that how can I say this? Having the real, like, for 4 years, this story's been, everything that most people have read about has been a lie about me for 4 years. I've had zero voice. I've not said anything. This is the first time I've had every single reporter in America, the big ones, that reach out and say, we want to talk to you. We want to do an exclusive report. And I've said no every time.
So you went with some idiot from Montana. Excellent.
Cleared hot, bro.
Do you know what the radio call means? That's what it comes from.
Cleared hot?
Yeah.
It's something in the military for sure.
So it's the last radio call.
Right before you shoot, right?
So if you're a ground controller, you're on the ground. It's basically your acceptance that you accept responsibility for the ordnance that comes off of the aircraft. So kind of similar to what you're
Okay.
doing right now. It's just like away we go.
Okay.
Getting ready to release it from under the wing of the aircraft and let
Yeah.
it impact.
That's awesome, dude.
Ties in well.
It does tie in well, and,
Yeah.
I think that's just rad. You guys have got a great podcast and great audience. And the other thing is look, you're a pilot. I'm a pilot. You've been in the military. I've never have, but I've loved the military my whole life. My grandpa was in the military. His submarine got hit, and they went in circles and circles and circles. And they're one of I can't remember how many it was that even survived out of all of them. And theirs just went in circles, and around the enemy ships are just going in circles. They couldn't hit them. And it's the only thing that saved their life. Dude, I'm not kidding. It saved their life. And it was like, if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be here alive today.
Yeah.
And I just know that like how fragile life is. And we're about ready to go into a world now where I think there's going to be a lot more wars coming. Because people are just getting way too bold and way too crazy. And you look at Ukraine and Israel and all this other stuff, and it's like the stability we used to have is no longer there. And I just think that like what, the people have been through a lot of this, and what your listeners and your history and I wanted someone that I felt like I could actually talk to and trust in a way that I could connect with someone,
Yeah.
being a pilot, especially, I love to fly helicopters and planes is like one of the things I love to do. And it helps you connect with someone. And I just haven't felt like I could trust anybody yet to tell the story. And I wanted the story told. And it's just awesome to have that truth out finally. It's finally the pendulum swinging now. You look at the blogs, people are like, bring Trevor back, free Trevor. Like, it's like for the first time in 4 years, now they're coming back my way and they're like, look at the company. They've destroyed themselves. Where's Trevor? Why can't he, this wasn't happening. And it's like, and then they see that like, it's just been a big lie for 4 years.
What's the saying? A lie will be around the world 3 times before truth gets out of bed in the morning. The submarine, was it making left-hand turns or right-hand turns?
I think it was left. I'm going to ask my dad that though.
We need to know this because whatever direction it was, if you are like ever lost and don't know which
Dude,
way to
go
go,
that
you've
way.
got to go the direction that it was going. Like
That's
this is
funny,
a gem.
dude. That is funny. It's like jump off the left cliff or right cliff.
If you don't know, whatever works for him, that needs to be your new standard.
Left downwind or right downwind, bro.
Yep. Every time you can take it, take it. It's obviously beneficial.
Dude, I got some good advice from you today. I'm going to take 3 or 4 nuggets and frame them on my wall and it'll help me through some of the things in life. I think it'll help through a lot of people here too that'll feel the pain because they've been through as much. A lot of people have been through as much as as any of us have. So
yeah. Well, thanks for making the time, man. I appreciate you being so open and forthcoming about what was going on with you. A lot of people would not be willing to do so. And yeah, you got some more things to see in Montana. Let's get you out here.
let's do it.
All right.
Thanks, Seth.
Yep.